All right. Good evening, everybody. It is 7:01 on Monday, January 30th. This is our first policy review committee. We're an ad hoc committee, and we were formed in December to look over all of the district policy and all the district administrative guidelines and recommend alterations, changes, even elimination of some policy.
Just because we're recording this, I would just recommend you just read
Okay.
from your agenda start so that you have, for the minutes, we need to have what time the meeting started,
Who's here? Yeah.
what time the meeting ended,
All right.
that sort of thing. And then you might just want to run through your agenda so that that's sort of in the record, and then
Okay, thank
go
you.
on with.
We have in attendance myself, Connor Kurtz, Chairman, Andrew Basil, and Frank Sermonero. Monica Hamill is not present this evening, along with members of the public and the press. I'm going to now read the agenda for today. Oh, and Dr. Otto.
Just for the record.
Yeah, just for the record. One, we're going to have a call to order and introduction. That's what this is here. Two, we're going to talk about the process for reviewing these policies, any ideas to speed it up or make it more efficient. Three, we're going to begin reviewing the 000 policies, which are local board procedure. These policies govern how the board runs. Then we're going to begin reviewing the 100 policies and administrative guidelines. Those deal with programming in the district. Then we are going to, hopefully, as time allows, begin reviewing the 200 policies and administrative guidelines. Those govern pupils. And then at the end, we'll just have some discussion about how the evening went, any ideas moving forward, kind of a post-mortem after looking at all this stuff. Then we'll adjourn the meeting. So I guess now we'll move on to, public comment. If you have any public comment, of course, this is going to be a very informal meeting. It might be difficult if you don't have policy to follow along with, which is why I'm going to ask Dr. Otto. We got an email today from Mrs. Barr with the policies, all of them condensed, not just on the website. You have one policy listed after the next. This policy has them all in one file. I think it would be beneficial to put that on the website, so if anybody wants to download it to their laptop, they can bring their laptop to the meeting and follow along.
So you can actually,
public.
You mean if they want to download this whole book?
Yeah. I think that might be more convenient because they don't have access to Wi-Fi in this room.
So you want to have this?
If she takes the PDF that she
Yeah.
emailed to us and she just posts it on the website somewhere, that's going to be a lot more helpful because, quite frankly, for me, in preparing for this, it was like I have to go, you have to upload the page, then save it, upload the next page, save it, go to the next page, save it as you go through. It's just a very cumbersome process.
Yep.
As opposed to pulling down one file onto your desktop and then you can page through it at your leisure.
Yeah. So if we can do that, and that might be good for the public if you want to keep coming to these meetings. They're not going to be very exciting, I don't think. But it would be helpful to follow along. So the review process, what I envision is going through each policy, and then if it has an accompanying administrative guideline, I'd like to take a look at that, because normally they complement each other. The policy is more of an overarching idea, I guess you could say, and the administrative guidelines explain how to implement that idea. That's just kind of a very basic explanation. Do we have any questions or comments from the committee on how we want to move forward with reviewing these?
I think the way you got it is just fine.
All right.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. Our total scope of work here is approximately 300. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's about over 250 policies and 150 administrative guidelines, I believe. I counted them earlier, but I don't remember off the top of my head what they are.
I think it'll go rather quickly on some and
Yes.
maybe a little bit more quickly on the others.
Well,
The only question I have, I think what you outlined is great. And, the only question I have is, are there any priorities that would force us to just jump ahead of this process of going through the zeros, 100s, 200s? Is there anything
that's a good question. I know
I think there's one that I wanted to bring to the attention tonight, and I'm glad you brought it up, Frank, is I think it's section 308, which has to do with the superintendent review.
Okay.
And I think that, we know we have an issue with that one, and since at the end of the year, we have to do a superintendent review, and these policies, when you change them, require at least 2 readings in the public. I just think it'd be beneficial that we get to that one sometime at the end of February or beginning of March. so that one is out of the way, whatever is recommended from this committee to the board, because there may be some discussion at the board level as well. So maybe that one needs to take some precedent over some others.
Okay.
Just so that it's in place before the end of April, I think would be appropriate. So that come May, when the board is actually doing its reviews, May, June, that policy is in place. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings between now and the end of April, beginning of May, was the committee of the whole and voting board voting meetings to get that done. That's the only one I could think of off the top of my head that would really take precedence.
I don't particularly have any right now that stand out.
I found something today, and when I was looking through some of these, which you had a question about a few meetings ago, or last full board meeting, about who sets the time frame for special competitions or the extension of the athletic season, the band season, and who sets that competition schedule. We actually have a policy about that, which explains who sets it, or at least an administrative guideline, and I think we're going to get to that tonight, hopefully. I'm not sure if that's under pupils, or I think it's under programs. So I think we'll get to that tonight, which I think might be helpful going forward with that issue in the Memorial Day Parade we were speaking about at the last meeting.
I think there was one other one I was thinking of too. It was so 308 was one. The other one was it was in the 600s. Let me just take a look here.
So while I was looking for that, help me through what our process is going to be. We're going to review these. If you make changes or modifications, we take those recommendations as we come up with them to the next board meeting, just for that set of policies?
I believe that would be ideal.
So let me make a suggestion before we get too far out here.
Yeah.
I think what you might want to do, and this is just a suggestion since I've been through one of these policy reviews before, is I think you've got to take a comb through each of the series and decide whether it's something you want to look at, whether it's something that we're satisfied with, and then just simply eliminate it from consideration. And then once you compile the list of things that need further consideration, certainly during the confines of this committee is not going to be the time to work on them. That would be the administration's responsibility to go back and say, okay, there's something up with this, we need to bring this back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think if you stop and do this and then stop and do that, you could be doing through this process for 3 years. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
And I know that when we actually went through a policy book when I was in a former place of employment, and it took over a year to get this done. So I don't want to have any misgivings about what's really involved in this, because I can tell you, as I did my perusal of the zeros and the 100s, there are incorrect citations from the school code. There are some policies that are going to need to be discussed at the administrative level as to what we might want to do with them, whether we want to. There's 3 things that need to happen. You need to just leave a policy alone. You need to review it and just say it was updated. And then the third thing is you need to either revise or delete a policy. This process should lead to, quite frankly, some of these things maybe being taken right off the books because we're either not doing it, it's not pertinent, or the state or federal statute has changed in some way, shape, or form that's no longer relevant.
And I hope that the administration can bring back ideas and they can check those citations and other information like that. I know for a board member just going through this, I'm looking at things which, what I did when I was going through this on my own, I looked at things and I highlighted what I see issues with the current policy and how it's been being implemented, if it was being implemented, things like that, factual issues. I know there's an administrative guideline in here that has the name of Rita Jones on it, and to contact her if you have a question about something.
Right, and those are the kind of things that I said, when we identify those things, we can be doing some work in the background administratively that's going to save everybody a lot of time here at this meeting.
That's good.
I wouldn't expect this meeting to be a place where you actually, do the work. We'll do the work administratively once we identify what the issues are. That's kind of the way I'm viewing it. certainly, the other board members, you can weigh in on that thought.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting as we go through this, because I was reviewing it over the weekend. There were a couple sections, and I can't remember them now, and I actually wrote them down on some notes that I'll forward to the policy committee afterwards, about things that we're just not doing that we're supposed to be doing. I think one of them had to do with the capital budget, what defined capital expenditures versus non-capital expenditures, and that was an argument that we often had here as a board. One of them saying that you needed to capitalize certain expenditures, and I don't know if we've been doing that as a school district in our office.
And I would agree with you. When we did this review at North Penn, we found extensively what you're suggesting. Either practices were no longer being followed according to the policy, or we're doing new things that aren't written down on paper. So yes, this process is going to ferret a lot of that out.
Well, and I think it'll be helpful. I mean, and also in terms of our budget, I'm just reading through here, if you get into 600s, we're supposed to be preparing not only a budget for next year, but an estimated budget for the following year as well, which kind of gets into the argument of multi-year budgets and how we can sort of try to push for that for years and years and years. It talks about having to use surplus funds from prior years to apply against taxes, and we've never done that. It also talks about having a simplified budget that's presented to the public, as opposed to what's just being put forth as per the state requirements. So those are all things that we've talked on at one point or another since I've been a board member, but we haven't really, I think, as a district, effectively executed upon. And so it'll be interesting to see how what this process shakes loose in terms of best management practices.
It will definitely do that. So that's going to be a byproduct of what happens in this committee.
That's good. Dr. Otto and I were talking a little bit before the meeting. When the last time the district has reviewed its policies? And this, Dr. Otto said he can't remember a time, and
given my tenure around here, it's short compared to some people.
But
I can only speak to up to 2008. We haven't done anything like this.
Yeah, date last revised, just flipping through here, 99, 96. There are some things in here which date back 93, 91. A lot of this stuff is old and hasn't been looked at in decades. So this is our chance really to look at it and update it. So I guess we can get started on local board procedure policy 001. Name and classification. I have nothing to comment on this policy. Does anybody, having read through it earlier, I don't think there's anything really we need to look at.
To be honest with you, I don't think there's anything to really look at until you get to 4.
Yes, that's what I thought so too. So we're going to move on.
Who's checking the references to make sure that those paragraphs that are referenced in the school code and the Pennsylvania Constitution are still accurate?
That's a good point.
I started to do that already, and I have. When I see one that's not applicable, I'll tell you. But I do believe if that section there that you see, when you see a 3-digit number, like that
school code, right?
that number, actually, that is the citation for the school code. And I actually brought a book, and just to give you an idea, so we don't have to do this every time we come to one. Section 201, all this does is give you broad guidance as to why you're allowed to do this, and if anything that you have on paper can't be inconsistent with these citations. So citation 201 speaks to how constituted, okay? So, and it talks to all school districts shall remain as now constituted until changed, and that's a lot of legal language, but that is the proper citation that you need there for that. And given that this one was just, for some reason, the board in 2007 took a look at this.
She's looking at
001.
But I think Mr. Sermoner's question is how we go, or we're reviewing these policies, but we want to make sure that the reference matches up if any changes have been made, and that's something that would need to be done at an administrative level going through.
I would tell you this, if anything is within, I would say within a 5-year window. I mean, Brian Subers probably did this, and I don't really think we need to be paying the solicitor to take a look at these again. I think these are pretty accurate. I would start to get a little antsy, anything that's about 10 years or older. And I've started to look at some of those, and when we get to those, I'll point them out as examples.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it hurts to, my recollection is part of the Fox Rothschild thing is, I think it's covered.
Part of the retainer? I'll take a look at that.
Applies to this, so I think one of it, I would agree with you, if a policy was put in place in the last couple of years. I mean, Mr. Suber should know when the code was recently updated and what those sections were that were updated.
Right.
Obviously, they don't update the entire code. They
Correct.
update certain sections of the code as they go along. And so he should have dates as to when those sections were updated in Harrisburg. And then I would start there and then work backwards and say, okay, well, what sections then apply to our policy?
Just by way of example, when you look at section 212 of the school code, what is it? It's the school district's right to incorporate a corporate seal. And it just reads, each school district in this Commonwealth may, by majority vote of the members of the Board of School Directors of such district, adopt the corporate seal for the use of said district. The seal shall have engraved thereon the following: School District of Pennsylvania, and such other inscription or design as the Board of School Directors may direct.
Yeah, I think so. The point is, I don't know if that's something that we're going to be able to do as a committee.
Yeah.
But certainly
No, I'm not suggesting you that we'll do that.
Should be going through here and making sure that all the
Legal stuff
The
is
legal stuff.
accurate.
That will be an administrative task.
And quite frankly, if this is scanned in to, into a PDF file, you can do searches through Adobe by putting in. That's why I was sort of saying that if it's like section 401, if you type in 401, it will highlight everything in that PDF file that has 401 in it.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And so then you can go to just those areas
Right.
that have 401. Like if 401 was updated, in part of the school code, and you go back and you look at a document, you see all the places where 401's been highlighted, and then you can make sure that has been updated appropriately.
But yes, section by section, it'll take a little time administratively, but we will make sure that those citations are correct.
All right.
And where they are not already, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank
Just
you.
in my first pass.
All right. Now, I myself have gone through up to mid to 75% of the 200s, and I have highlighted various things of varying importance, just some typographical issues, from minor things to that to some more major things. That's just a little side note I wanted to give. Mr. Basil mentioned that he saw nothing wrong with the policies 01 to and 02 and 03. Moving on to 04, Mr. Sermero, do you have any problems with any of those policies? All right.
I would like to state for the record here that once we go through a series, I think we should bring it back to the board for approval. I don't believe if we're not doing a revision, I think we should put a line on here that says date last reviewed, because a review of the policy would not require a board 2-month process, but we can just stamp back on here that as of this date. So for boards going forward 5 to 10 years from now, when there are different people in the room, they can go back and say, well, when was the last time that policy was even looked at?
Okay. So some of these policies don't even have dates that they were adopted on.
No, that is
from a while
correct,
ago.
and that's going to be impossible to
find,
or almost relatively impossible. But I would say it won't be impossible to add a line that says date last reviewed.
Yeah, that'll at least give some date on the paper, which, I think that's a good idea for future boards to use. All right, so let's move on to 004, membership. My first issue was under Section 6. This is on page 2. The very bottom, it says, a school director who neglects or refuses to attend 2 successive regular meetings of the board unless detained by sickness or prevented by necessary absence from the district, or if in his or her official capacity as a school director, may be removed from his or her office on the affirmative vote of majority of those remaining members of the board. Now, I remember discussing with old board members, there was some controversy over what enabled a board to kick off one of its members if he missed 2 regularly scheduled meetings. I'm not sure if we can clarify that.
Well, I think the only comment I would have on that, and nothing like that has ever been discussed with me personally as superintendent, but looking at it from just a pure policy standpoint, whenever you have the word may in a policy, it does not commit the board, it doesn't say the board will, it says the board may, and from a legal standpoint, may gives the board discretionary power as to whether or not they want to do that. So I don't know if there's ever been conversation. That's something you'd have to, that's not a power that the superintendent has.
Yeah.
Now, this is purely within the domain of the board. But I can say that, look, in the past, this particular paragraph has been brought up amongst board members, maybe not collectively in a board meeting, but I think certain board members have tried to use that stick as a weapon against other board members who, for whatever reason, couldn't attend a meeting or not. Now, granted, under the definition here, if you're sick or you have some other legitimate, I think what it comes down to is the definition. So, unless detained by sickness or prevented by necessary absence from the school district. I mean, necessary absence can mean just about anything. You know, it may be necessary that I can't attend because I've got a business meeting. It could be necessary because I've got to go to a family function.
Yeah.
It could be necessary because I've got, who defines what necessary is?
That is something I think we need to talk about. I don't know. Is it the board decides that who may want to kick another board member off, or is it that board member who is absent who determines if his absence was necessary or not? I think that is something that could be an issue at some point. I'm not sure. Maybe it could be 5 years. Maybe it could be 50 years. I'm not sure. But necessary. Who determines what is necessary? Is it the board or is it the individual school director who was absent?
I think it would be my interpretation is it falls to the individual school.
That's my interpretation too. I don't know. I think it would be good if the policy stated that.
Yeah, I think, obviously what we don't want to have happen is you don't want somebody sitting at home watching a football game and eating bonbons and neglecting their duty, right? And then you're stuck with a board where have 2 or 3 people doing that, or 4, or 5, and now you don't have quorums, okay? And so I think, obviously, there needs to be some constraint in here that says if you don't have a board member doing what they've been elected to do, and they don't have legitimate reasons for doing that, then you need...
Directly from the school code.
Yeah, then you need to have the ability to get
direct
rid of
school
it.
code language.
Okay.
That's section 319 of the school code.
The school code also talks about regular meetings of the school board, and they are much more infrequent than we have meetings. I think it's one a month, maybe, if that.
One every 2 months is required.
One every 6 a year. That's what it was. So if you're having 6 meetings a year, this policy by the school code, Pennsylvania school code, was developed to say, look, there's only 6 meetings, and if you miss 2 of those meetings, then and the reason you miss those meetings is because you say, I don't want to come and talk about that. You flat out did not, refuse to attend because of neglect or whatever.
Yeah.
Then the school board can take action. So if you look at the percentage of six a year and you miss 2, if you take that percentage, 2 regularly scheduled meetings is nothing for what we do.
Yes, but our meetings are regularly scheduled. Our committee of the whole meetings are regularly scheduled, as well as our voting meetings.
Right.
So that could mean if one school director happens to miss a month, one committee of the whole and one regular,
that's correct.
He could leave. Whereas the Pennsylvania school code was written that maybe if he would have to miss a 4-month period, he wouldn't have had to come any meetings.
Correct.
So 1 month versus 4 months, that's a pretty big difference.
It's a third of the meetings.
Yeah.
That's what the school code says, if you miss a third.
And our policy is saying if you miss a 12th of the meetings. So I don't know. I think
you could change this to say a school director who neglects or refuses to attend 2 successive regular voting meetings or whatever it is, as defined by the school code. And you can reference 6. There's lots of different ways to skin the cat. I've always looked at this, and I've heard scuttlebutt in the past, not firsthand, but where board members are like, so-and-so hasn't been here for 2 meetings, we need to get them off the board, and we're going to use this as, leverage. And the issue always comes down to one of, how do you define necessary absence? Yeah. It's your word against that school director's, school board member's word, whether or not his absence was necessary or her absence was necessary or not. And I've talked to legal counsel about this, and they said this is almost impossible.
Well, somebody would have to bring a motion, and then the board would have to move it forward for vote.
Well, then there's a hearing. You have to go to a hearing. You can't just unilaterally kick somebody off the board. There has to be a hearing, and there has to be, and that decision can be appealed to a court of common pleas.
Right.
And a judge is going to sit there and say, well, wait a minute, 5 of you think that this person's absence was not necessary? Yeah. How do you define that versus what this guy's saying or person's saying?
Okay.
It's almost
the policy, it doesn't. Without any further delving into this, it doesn't say you need to have a hearing. When I was just reading it off the top, if you have to have a hearing, I guess, I don't know. I just think there's a big difference between what the school code says, 2 meetings one meeting every 2 months versus we have one meeting sometimes every 2 weeks. I'm not sure. Maybe if we don't want to change that, then we can move on.
I wouldn't recommend.
You wouldn't recommend changing
I mean,
that?
that's just me. I think it's worked. I don't think there's been a big issue. It's current with it. It certainly is within your bounds legally. There's no issues there.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on.
I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about that, Frank?
I think I was the brunt of this policy, so I think it should be made clear.
You want to make it clear? I'd like to make it clear.
I think if you take the percentage, you figure out what's a third of the meetings we have every year, and say, okay, that's the new number. Instead of 2 regularly scheduled or 2 successive, it's whatever that number ends up being. And I don't know how you make.
And who defines regular?
Well, if you're
in a
not,
budget workshop meeting, is that a regular meeting?
let me just say, as you make that, then this will come off of this book, and it'll come back to a full board meeting, and it's going to take 2 months of deliberation. So every one of these that we pull out and do that, that's where we're headed.
Well, I mean, the reason why.
No, I'm not saying no or yay or nay not to do it, but this is our first one where we're stopping and saying, wait a minute.
If I look back at the 3 years I've been here, I mean, the policies that I would be interested in reviewing are the ones that came up and caused grief over the course of the 3 years I've been here, and this was one of them. Because of that language being what it is. I mean, it forced us to go get legal advice,
Right.
to say define this for us.
And this whole series is totally at the discretion of the board.
Okay. So
Well, I think it warrants more conversation. So, I mean, while we're here, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one way of approaching is a percentage. You can say it's 30% of the regularly scheduled meetings.
What section are you actually thinking about a word change?
We're talking about Policy 4, Section 6, Paragraph 3.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, which says a school director who neglects or refuses to attend 2 successive regular meetings of the board,
Yeah, that's pulled straight from the
unless
school
detained
code.
by sickness or prevented by necessary absence from the district, or if in his or her official capacity as a school director may be removed from his or her office on the affirmative vote of a majority of the remaining members of the board. And there's lots of different ways you can look at that. You could say, okay, well, we need to define who's defining necessary absence. You could sit there and say, what's a regular meeting?
I think you should do that. I think we should define regular meetings and specifically point out committee of the whole or CAL meetings and our voting meetings.
Yeah. Maybe say 2 successive regular voting meetings.
Well, we advertise
They're all voting meetings.
Okay.
all of our meetings as voting meetings. So that in of itself, I mean, you could say voting meetings, but as in, the way
Won't
we
help you.
conduct
It won't-
ourselves
okay.
It won't
here,
help.
it just says that.
It won't be descriptive enough.
All right.
Or just say in parentheses, leave the paragraph the way it is, but in parentheses after regular meetings, say regular meetings are defined as
Yeah, I think you can-
either our CAL meetings or our voting meetings.
And at this point, what we would have to do is we would have to kind of, I don't know how much time you want to spend on it now, decide what language you want, and then bring that forward with, the strike-throughs and the additions and the this and the that.
Yeah. So what language do we want?
Well, I think
do we try to come up with the language, or do we just put it on a list of?
I think for now,
Something.
my recommendation would be you put it on a list, and if you want to work on some of the wording, that's up to you. Definitely on a
Do
list.
we just take a one scan through all these documents and kind of net out the ones we feel like we need to address, or do we try to address each one before we go to the next?
I think it'll be more productive if we've addressed each one as we go, because we don't want to come back.
these things out periodically as we need to the board to review, discuss, and approve, as opposed to wait until we get that all the way to the end and then starting the process over again and saying, well, here are the 15 that we're going to discuss. I think that's almost overwhelming for the board then to sit there back and say, well, wait a minute, we got to look at 15 of these things?
Yeah.
A lot easier one at a time.
I think that's a
I
good
agree
idea.
with Frank's suggestion. You just add it below here, or even as in parentheses after regular meetings, you can put parentheses as defined as committee of the whole and voting meetings that are voted on and agreed to as part of the school calendar.
Okay. So we would label on the school calendar this meeting, how would we label that? Or would it be, because right now a regular meeting, that is what it is, a committee of the whole, or are we going to choose committee of the whole?
No, it's those. My feeling is those 2 meetings are our regular meetings. The one we have at the beginning of the month, the one we have at the end of the month. what's not a regular meeting are committee meetings,
Workshops.
workshop meetings, any other
Okay, so we are saying,
executive session that might come up or something like that.
so we are saying though that, so you could miss a committee of the whole, and you could miss a regular voting, and those would be the two meetings, and the board could then go forward and they could pull the
well, I don't know
lever.
if two's the right number, though.
We're addressing one piece of this at a time. So I think
Okay.
the first piece is what's a regular scheduled meeting, and so
Okay,
I would
all right, I
define
got
a
it.
regular scheduled meeting as
Yeah, committee of the whole.
committee of the whole and a voting meeting as scheduled in the school calendar, because the board votes on the school calendar. When do we do that? In December.
Yes.
Each reorganization.
Yeah, so every December, we vote on what the school calendar is going to be, collectively as a group. So you could sit there and say,
12-month calendar,
yeah, it's a
January to
12-month
December.
calendar. But we could say, well, look, we're not going to meet, well, right now we don't meet in July, okay? And so, you know, there's only 22 meetings out of the year that are currently regularly scheduled. As a board, or a board sometime later may say, well, you know what, we're not going to meet twice a month every month. You know, we're going to have, you know, a voting meeting once every 2 months or something like that.
Okay.
I mean, we could decide what we're going to do, and that becomes the new calendar.
All right.
That's the way I would define
So
it.
for that part, we're going to say a school director who neglects or refuses to attend two successive regular meetings, parenthesis, committee of the whole, and voting meeting, close parenthesis.
No, I would say as defined as the committee of the whole and voting meetings as voted on as part of the regular calendar,
Okay.
school calendar.
Dr. Otto, can you
We'll
get...
let the lawyer legalese it up,
All right.
but I think the gist of that, I mean, I've written it down here, but I think, you know, you can let Brian come up with a more legal definition that we can then review and agree we like the language or don't like the language.
Okay.
So we're basically adding the language there, we're clarifying what meetings, what makes a meeting.
What makes a regular meeting?
Two successive regular meetings being defined as, and that's what you have to put in, committee of the whole and voting.
Okay. Is that
As
defined by...
as scheduled in the school calendar. I mean, I would include that as well.
As-
Because we may decide after the school calendar is approved that we're going to have 3 committee of the whole meetings in a given month.
Well, don't you
We
have...
did have a special committee of the whole meeting and voting meeting one July when we were in the middle of the stadium project because we had to vote on some disbursements and whatnot. I remember that. And some people were, I think there was only 5 of us here for that meeting.
Yeah.
So, but that was added after the school calendar, well after the school calendar was put in place, and other people may have their schedules already put in place.
Okay.
So I think having the school calendar as the benchmark, that would be the start.
Okay.
I think the other 2 things we need to look at is the number of successive meetings and, you know, clarifying that necessary absence, in my opinion, should be defined as the member not attending would, you know, determine whether it's necessary for them to be there or not be there.
Well, I think the number's 6. And I say that based on having 2 meetings a month. So if someone misses the first month, it's like, okay, you can get over that. They miss the second month, both meetings, you're starting to have a problem. Then if they miss the third month, it's impacting our ability to get things done.
Yeah.
So to me, that sounds like that 3-month period, the way we do business here, that seems like the point at which you could say, look,
It's time to go.
clearly this person is saying they refuse to come. We define that next.
Do you want to set a number or do you want to set a percentage?
Oh,
Because a
yeah,
percentage will apply to any number.
yeah,
then.
you could say, I mean,
Maybe percentage.
6 gets you around 30%, 6 or 7.
Say
so
a
you could say
third of the
30%.
meetings, if you miss a third.
Consecutively? So,
Yeah,
okay. 1/3 of the meetings consecutively. That's good.
I think I agree with that.
Yeah. All right.
So that would be how many?
It depends on how many
Depends on what
scheduled.
the calendar's schedule is.
Yeah. So currently we have 22 regularly scheduled meetings, 30% of 22.
So you want to change
You
the
missed
school
about 3
code
months.
word,
You missed about 3 months
school
of the
director who
meetings.
neglects or refuses to attend 2 successive regular meetings, you want that wording changed.
Yeah.
Successive meetings equivalent to 30% of the scheduled.
Which, in our particular case, is almost it's going to be like 7 meetings.
I have a question. Which overrides? Is it the state school code? I mean, if you change this, will someone be able to argue that the state school code
No.
meetings?
I mean, if we're in conflict with the state school code, so if we said you can, I think the school code says
Says
two
what it says there.
consecutive, but they only have a minimum of 6, right? If you said 1 consecutive, then, if you miss one meeting, I think that would be a problem because you're in direct conflict with what the state says. It gives you at least 2.
You can never
Right.
do less than what the
Okay.
You do
state.
less than 6, you got a problem.
You can't deny, because doing that is a protection per se. And you can't remove someone's protection that's guaranteed them by the state. But you can make it less, you don't have
Make it
to
less
at 2.
restrictive.
You can make it less restrictive, but you can't make it more restrictive.
And would it be possible, like, I voted for both Andrew and Frank. Frank gets thrown off, they want to throw Frank off the school board. Who elects to put that person back in, or can it go back to a referendum?
There's a whole process.
Well, the board would appoint someone temporarily, and then in the next special election, kind of what happened with Mr. Shear, when he resigned, the board appointed Mrs. Twardowski, and then a special election was held recently in which Mr. Wolf won. It would be like that. The board would appoint someone.
Shane, your answer is spelled out in the school code as well. There's a specific process that's followed. It's called Section 319, vacancy where director fails to qualify or attend meetings. And then they have to fill that vacancy according to what the school code says. You can't kind of make it up as you go along. You have to do what the school code says.
Now, I want to keep moving along, so let's get this done here. I'm fine with the 30%. Mr. Basil's fine with 30%. All right, and then finally,
I think necessary absence.
necessary absence is at the discretion of the school director. Okay, necessary absence shall be defined as an absence necessary at the discretion of the individual school director. Of the school director in question, maybe that would be better. And now, Dr. Art, are you going to go back and strike all this out and insert the new wording?
Well, to be honest with you, it's hard to keep up with all this with the wording, so you're just going to have to bear with me.
Okay,
I'm probably going to have to go back
Yeah.
and listen to these minutes
that's
because this
probably
isn't.
good.
It's all right, I'm taking notes. Okay.
All right, so
Anything else anybody has on this?
no.
I think you need to update orientation.
Yes, I was going to say that too. I think you need to add laptop. Then it does say, and other materials deemed appropriate by the superintendent, which would include the laptop.
And the superintendent didn't deem the laptops appropriate.
Oh, okay, so,
That was the board's decision.
all right, I guess the policy should
I think
reflect that then.
the other materials deemed appropriate by the superintendent would refer to some of the things I put in the recent upgrade to the orientation process.
Okay, all right. But then I think we should add that a laptop should be received under one of those check marks.
Well, there may come a time, what happens if you don't need laptops? I think I agree with Dr. Otto. Any other materials deemed appropriate by the superintendent can.
I would suggest this by the board and or superintendent.
You
Okay.
can add to that superintendent and or board.
All right.
Um,
Also, here we say a copy of the board policy manual. I would specify that some of these things are online. When I read this before I was sworn in, I was expecting to actually receive hard copies. But I would mention specifically that these are online. Copy of the online board policy manual, copy
You
of
might
the
want to say
online-
copy / and or access to.
Okay, that would be fine.
Electronic copy of.
That's good. Copy and or access to. Do we agree with that? All right. I want to try to keep this moving because we have a lot we need to get to, and if there's not controversy, we might as well just sail through. All right. I have nothing else in policy for membership. Anybody have anything else they'd like to talk about? And we can come back to these if anybody gets anything, but... All right. Policy 5, organization. I thought maybe changing the name to reorganization because that's what we call it, but other than that, that's really a minor thing. Like it says organization meeting, technically we call it a reorganization meeting. But I don't know if that is important.
I think in terms of the organizational meeting, I think in the past, we've seen the organizational meeting turn into, it's obviously always political.
Yeah.
And I think,
Where are you, Kyle? Policy 5.
Oh, you've skipped.
Yeah, we finished up 4.
Okay. So we are at this early date saying 04 is coming out of the book. It's going to need revision.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those revisions that we talked about, that we'd like to.
No. I have some sketch notes.
Okay.
I didn't like the idea, we're talking about this reorganization section, and maybe I'm short-sighted with it, but I didn't like the idea, like this one, past one, for example, where the holdover, I was one of the holdover members. There were only 3 of us. And I was elected temporary president, and during that time, I don't have the ability to nominate someone for the seat of president. I mean, I don't know if that goes against major policies, but I just don't, I'm looking to see where it says.
I think the issue is that we're governed by Robert's Rules of Order, and Robert's Rules of Order says that whoever's presiding over, I'm not a Robert's Rules of Order aficionado, but I actually asked Supers about this at the last voting meeting when he was sitting next to me. I said, can a board president make nominations or second nominations? And he's like, my recollection from Robert's Rules of Order is no. And so maybe that needs to be changed because, quite frankly, if you're presiding over, the meeting, why shouldn't you have any other right to make a nomination if none is forthcoming? I mean, maybe that's what needs to be qualified is that if there's, you have to go last in terms of making a motion for something.
I was reading
everybody else, because otherwise you might have an advantage because you're presiding over the meeting. You might be able to throw a motion out that doesn't give somebody else an opportunity. Like I'm reading the agenda and blah blah blah, and I make a motion that who the hell has a chance to jump in there if you're presiding over the meeting?
For my reading of Robert's Rules of Order, the board president has every right as any other member of the body to nominate. That's just, I'm not an expert on this, but we'd have to defer to Mr. Subers, who said that it's kind of a gray area, which I guess it should be addressed.
I mean, I agree with you, Frank, that I think just because someone nominates you to sit as the temporary president,
you shouldn't lose that right.
You can either A, say I'm not going to do it, right, and then because I want to nominate somebody, and then all 3 people sitting around there could be saying, well, I don't want to do it either because I want to nominate somebody, and then nothing happens, right? So you should be able to have that opportunity to do that. I agree.
All right, so I think we should change. What would we need to change in that to make that
Well, if you really
clear?
change anything for the policy, maybe it's something
You
that just
have
need
to
to
add
clarify.
something in.
I think, okay.
Again, this policy was revised 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is very recent. And the policy revision occurred as a result of making, really adding a new standing committee.
Yeah, that was something that we need to do too. Add curriculum and instruction as a standing committee, but that's it, other than what we're talking
Well,
about.
that'll
now.
actually require a 2-month process.
Yeah,
That's an amendment to the policy.
but it is a standing committee, so I think we need to go through with that process. I don't think.
Oh
it's a
yeah,
two-month
this one's got to
process.
get pulled.
Yeah.
But as we're pulling it, are there any other, since Frank, you raised that issue,
Well, I think the second part of this is, I think you can add that in when we start talking about the election of officers. And under that section, I mean, the first thing that struck me was election of officers shall be by the majority of those present and voting. Where no such majority is achieved on the first ballot, a second ballot shall be cast for the 2 candidates who receive the greatest number of votes. Now, this traditionally has been a sticking point for us because the way it had been done in the past was whoever shouts out the name first, gets that person's name then is voted on first. If they receive a majority of votes, there is no vote on a second candidate or a third candidate or a fourth candidate, okay? Because the first one got the 5 votes.
it's like playing Jeopardy, who hit the buzzer first.
And that's a ridiculous way of doing it, quite frankly, because there may be 2 or 3 people running that would each get 5 votes, and then it just came down to who was nominated first. And I think 2 years ago, that kind of came to a head when there was quite a bit of tension as to who was going to be president, and collectively we agreed that everybody should vote a name as opposed to voting on these things in a ballot process. And in this particular case, I mean, there's a difference. Robert's Rules of Order would say that, yes, you go around and shout out names and you vote on them in the order in which they've been nominated. However, Robert's Rules of Order doesn't address a ballot situation, and so when you look up the definition of a ballot, it says that you're casting
Yes.
a vote for a particular candidate, not any candidate or as many candidates as you want. You have to actually cast a vote for one particular candidate. So this past year, we tried to clarify that, and obviously, collectively, we agreed that we would do it in that fashion. But I think that needs to be in black and white in the policy. So perhaps that one you just refer to Subers and have him
Clarify.
direct the language that says that we will be voting. Candidates will be nominated, as many candidates as people
Very
want.
procedural.
Number one,
Yes.
and number two, when it comes to voting, people will vote on a candidate by specifically giving that person's name.
Which section is that?
That-
Under section
Section 2, third-
policy
section
number
3.
No,
5.
I'm on that. Which section?
3,
Section
which is
3.
the first page.
1 of 5.
So that paragraph, you just want to get Mr. Supers to go in and say, we want it to be more procedural. We want it to explain how the process worked. We want it to be how it worked this year. Nominations are made and we vote on the names. We don't nominate it in the first name shouted out.
Where did the
Vote.
shout out come since it's not listed here?
That
It was an
was
interpretation.
past practice.
Yeah, it was an interpretation of previous boards of what this policy reads and what Robert's Rules of Order dictates. And
Thank you.
it was their belief that it meant whoever's name got shouted out first went through the list. And
Yeah,
it's always this,
And quite frankly,
It's ridiculous
Lori
thing
Barr
going on.
found a Word document that had that sort of procedure written up, but it didn't cite anything.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And so, I went and looked at Robert's Rules of Order to see what the process was. And then I looked at balloting systems, and I read what the process was for balloting systems.
So,
and
as a-
we specifically call out ballots here. So, when I pointed that out to Subers, he said, well, yeah, you should be doing it as per the balloting system. But there seems to be some confusion between which one is which, and quite frankly, I think we did it the right way this year. Everybody was in agreement to that, but we need to spell that out in our policy so that going forward, any future board, there's never a question as to who can nominate who and how you're supposed to vote for them. Because otherwise, it becomes down to this pedantic issue of who can shout out a name, and all the power then goes to the temporary president to then decipher which name he heard first, or he or she heard first. It's just it's a ridiculous way of nominating officers.
All right, so we have that clear. We like that to go and be. We want it to be more black and white.
So, in that section, we should probably amend officers to have, before letter A, we need a new letter A and move that, first letter A should be the procedure for how it's done. That would be my recommendation.
I think once you get to
I think well, I think what's there is already good. I wouldn't change what's
Well,
there. I would just amend.
Section 3, above letter A.
Section 3, what we did it this year is correct. Is according to the policy, but we want it to be more clear.
Yeah, I
we want to
understand that.
clarify. So we want it more added. It could be however it's set up. We just
before
want
you
to
even
clarify.
get to A, I think you start right here, election of officers.
So that whole
shall be
paragraph.
by a majority of those present and voting, period. And then you start going into the procedures right there. That whole second sentence, which says where no such majority is achieved, before you even talk about that, I think you sit there and you can go into A, and then you have a B, which says any board member may nominate candidates for any officer position, even the presiding officer. I think that needs to be in there. And then number 2 is members will vote by casting, by speaking the name of the candidate for that particular position in alphabetical order. You could even do it that way, as opposed to instead of in order of nomination, it could be in alphabetical order, so that there's no sort of bias. Okay, everyone's going to have to say the name, you just go around the room, you say the name of the candidate of who you're voting for, and that's the way it's done. And you start with whatever the voting order is for the board.
So let me clarify here for the sake of everyone. We're going to specify the procedures. We're going to say that any board member, including the presiding officer, may make nominations. And do we want to say we want to go in alphabetical order for casting ballots?
I think we have a voting order
Okay, so
that takes place, and I don't think it really
yeah.
matters.
All right, so we're going to specify the procedures, and we're going to say
we
that
do that. Now I'm thinking about that. Alphabetical order was a bad idea because we rotate.
based on who
Specifically
voted
rotate
first.
the votes so that
Yeah.
people aren't stuck in the same order
All
every
right.
single time.
Okay, so forget the alphabetical order. We're going to specify the procedures, and we're going to say that any board member, including the presiding officer, may make nominations for any officer position, or any office, I guess.
Any candidate for
Yeah,
office.
any candidate for office. That's good. All right. Anything else in 05 organization?
Well, members have to vote by name. That needs to be spelled out instead of just
Okay.
saying yes or no. You're
board
voting
members
on the
vote.
position. You're not voting on the candidate. So you're saying essentially, we're voting on the vice president, Mr. Kurtz. Who do you vote for? And you have to shout out a name. You can't say, well, we're voting on Frank Seminaro, yes or no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's
Frank Seminaro, 4.
Board members vote by casting. By stating a name. Is that good?
Name of office.
All right. Anything else? And then, of course,
Is there a duplicate paragraph here, or it's just the way I'm reading it? If you look at the bottom of page 2 of 5, where in the middle of that paragraph, officers of the board may be removed from office for incompetence, intemperance, neglect of duty, blah, blah, blah. You see that section?
yeah, I see it. It's the
And
same
then
as
if
on
you-
3 of 5.
If you go down to page 3 of 5,
Yeah, I see that. Oh, no, this says
it-
officers
it's
of the board.
That's
the other one says
appointees.
appointees
oh,
of the
these are
board.
appointees. Okay.
Yes, it's the same as just officers versus appointees. The other thing I had, we mentioned add curriculum instruction under the standing committees.
I think that paragraph actually, though, I knew that was in there somewhere. But this gets into the issue of if you can remove somebody.
Which paragraph are you talking about? Section
Bottom
6.
of page 2,
Oh.
it's like line 28, where it says neglect of duty, violation of the school laws, or other improper conduct, provided the officer charged shall have been given due notice of the reasons therefore, and an opportunity for a hearing, and provided that
Due
said
process.
removal has been approved by the affirmative vote of the majority of full boards, and blah, 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 blah.
That's just statutory due
Yeah,
process.
we're just talking about officers of the board here, but there's no paragraph that talks about a procedure for removing a board member from their seat.
Yeah. No due process for that, according to our policy.
Now,
It goes in
maybe
the
there
school
is
code.
on that previous.
Probably in the school code.
Maybe it's in the school code. I don't recall, but and maybe that's referred to under section 315 or section 319. But if it is, I don't see a reason why we wouldn't want to spell that out in number 4.
Yeah.
Well, some of that's going to take, you're going to have to use your solicitor to get some
Yeah,
of this
because it
too.
has to be something that's protects that school board member by the school board, by the Pennsylvania School Board itself. So, for example, you're a 9 school board member, and all 8 school board members hate you. They can't just
I've been
say,
there.
I didn't want to point it out, but yeah. They can't just say, let's gang up and get rid of so
Rough crowd.
There needs to be more than just the school director majority. There needs to be protections because you were elected by the public and by the people. So I think that it's defined somewhere in the school code.
Maybe we should change it to a supermajority of 6 instead of 5, too. I don't know. That might be an option instead of just a majority, a supermajority.
Yeah, there's got to be reason. There's
Yeah.
got to be some real defined reason. It can't be just a majority because they don't like you. There has to be some.
Well, that would be
You need
born.
a process.
That would actually be borne out, I think. That paragraph.
We have a process here for getting rid of an officer. There should be a process for getting rid of the actual board member from this. from the post that they've been elected to. So,
I think that's all one and the same.
well,
no,
this specifically
this is
says officers. I mean, Section 5 is talking about officers.
Three officers.
Yeah.
So if you don't want, Frank to be treasurer or me to be president or whatever it is, there's actually a hearing that takes place. There's a process. You don't want Connor to be on the board anymore. Well, it's like majority rules, and he's out if he's missed 2 meetings. So I think, unless, like I said, unless sections 315 or 319 of the school code have a process in place, and I remember my conversations with the solicitor indicated that there was, and obviously there's a cost to go through that, but that's not spelled out anywhere here in our policy. Maybe it should be, because that may nip in the bud people's motives, I think, if they understood that there was a process involved to do something like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, it says here, the Section 514 of the school code is entitled Removal of Officers, Employees, etc. The Board of School Directors, and it's the same language. It's very simple. It's 2 paragraphs. The Board of School Directors in any school district, except as herein otherwise provided, shall, after due notice, giving the reasons therefore, and after hearing, if demanded, have the right at any time to remove any of its officers, employees, or appointees for incompetency, intemperance, neglect of duty, violation of any of the school laws of this Commonwealth, or other improper conduct.
What section is that?
Section 5-514
Of
of the school code.
Yeah, so I'm talking about as a board member. That you're still talking about.
No, he's still.
You're talking about officers. So when I'm talking about board membership. Like I'm a member of the board, and the majority wants to kick me off. We refer to sections 315 and 319 as part of that. But I don't know if there's a process in there in terms of the hearing and.
No, the removal of board members as just a member, not officer, is in Section 3.
315 and
3s,
319.
the 300 series.
Yeah, so I don't know if 315 and 319 have
A procedural aspect to them?
yeah, and if it doesn't, maybe we should.
315 deals with the filling of vacancies, and then 316 is the vacancies in the majority of members. Those
What about
may be inside
319?
319. Vacancy where director fails to qualify or attend meetings. Would you like me to read that?
Did you see
No, it's what
anything
it's
in there?
already. It's what it already says.
But do you see anything in there regarding
There's some other
procedure?
stuff.
No, there's no procedure.
Yeah,
That's
so
right, there's no procedure.
maybe we should add language in here that says there should be some sort of procedure that needs to be followed in terms of due process.
That I would defer to the solicitor for that.
Just a thought.
All right.
See what his thoughts are on that. I mean, I wrote that down here in my notes, so we can.
I think we can do that. That sounds good. All right. So we're going to have the solicitor work on that, putting due process in for the removal of an individual board member. It's another to-do.
It's the reason why, I'm sure this follows school code, but why the treasurer is elected in May,
Yeah, it's fiscal.
fiscal.
Yeah, you want to have the treasurer follow the fiscal year and not
As
have
of
a
June
treasurer
1st,
come
as
off
of
mid-year.
July 1st.
July. Yeah.
Why is the secretary also elected in May? Is it just
Well,
to
it's every
balance it?
4 years. The secretary's elected every 4 years, not every year. So that's pretty long, and they choose May, I guess. I don't
Maybe
know.
so all the new board members have a chance. I don't know, because 4 years is a long term.
With the solicitor, maybe you should ask if the entire board is in favor of making these changes before you pay the solicitor to write something up, and it goes to the board. And I'm not just saying this one in particular.
I believe this is all part of the retainer, though.
Oh,
So we pay the retainer for
okay,
certain services throughout the year.
that makes sense then.
And we haven't necessarily taken advantage of everything that they offer, so hence we're trying to take advantage now.
I can just picture these going to the solicitor.
Yeah, no, we're not looking to burn
sending
cash.
the bill,
Yeah.
and then it goes up to the school board.
And they turn it
say, no,
down.
we're
Because the
not
problem we would
finished.
have in that type of and that's a good suggestion, but I think the problem you have then is the board will get bogged down in the minutia of the language as opposed to the idea or the concept, and we'll spend hours as a board just doing what we've just done here, and then they'll say, "Well, send it to the solicitor and let's see what he writes and whether we can
And then it's
agree to that."
completely different.
You know, it's just
If it's part of his
Yeah.
fee, I would take advantage of that.
All right. Are we ready to move on to another policy here? Let me see. I have a
Oh,
note.
wait a minute. Let me just quickly
Okay.
take a look here. Because committees are here. We have to add
Curriculum and instruction.
curriculum instruction.
Do we want to mention something about the committees being published on the website? I don't know. That might have just been a little informal thing we did.
I think you're getting into administrative guidelines there.
Okay. All right. We can talk about that. Actually, we have no administrative guidelines for anything, the board procedures, but that can go somewhere else, I'm sure. Just an idea. So we're going to add curriculum and instruction. We mentioned that.
I think the other part of this is, I don't know how Frank you feel about this, but like the idea that you're not going to let your desire be known to the president until the committee of the whole meeting, and then it's not voted on until the voting meeting. I just found that to be a complete waste of time. I mean, you lose 2 months, particularly when you have a group of folks like this past election are gone. There's no continuity. So now you have defunct committees that aren't doing anything for the month of December or the month of January, and maybe they're up and running by February.
Which section are you referring
I'm
to?
referring to page 4, section 6 of Code 5, Policy 5. We're talking about committees. And in the
Section 6, okay.
line 21, board members who desire to participate on any standing committee shall make their desires known to the president by January committee of the whole meeting. And then after that, you go on. The committees appointments will require board approval, and that's done on like at the next voting meeting, which happens 2 weeks later. So what happened last year, for example, I was trying to select committee members. And, sending emails out every 3 days during the month of December, give me your selections, give me your selections. Somebody walks in at the end of the committee of the whole meeting and hands me their selections. I mean, you can't do anything until you get everybody's things together. And then you had the voting meeting 2 weeks later, and people were upset that they didn't get on whatever the committee is that they want. And then so I think that process needs to start much, much earlier. If we've got an orientation process now that's in place, it's helping folks understand what the committees are and what they do, particularly if you're a new board member, then I don't see any reason why you can't have your selections to the board president by the voting meeting in December. I mean, that's 2 weeks, actually almost 3 weeks out from when someone's is sworn in as a board member.
I'm not sure. I think some districts might even have you do it on reorganization night. They name committees because the members are given knowledge of what the committees are. They can make their committee selections. I think some districts might do that. I'm not positive, but I think I remember reading that some committees are named in some districts immediately.
I don't know, maybe this is something you guys administratively can get back to us and see what other school districts do in this particular regard. Because
I do think this
is way too late in the process.
In terms of...
Listen, regardless of what they do, I mean, what do we think we should do? I think,
Yeah,
I agree with Connor,
yeah.
I think we should get it done quick.
Yeah.
We have to do a better job of educating brand new school board members on what those committees are, and so there's a lot of work that has to get done from November to December if you have a new board member coming in.
Well, but think about what you're saying. That process doesn't happen except in election years. So for a number of years, you're sitting there, there's no reason why a committee can't be up and running at the end of that
Right.
organization meeting. Boom, you're done.
Right.
I mean, you're already here. There are some...
You got to write the policy for it.
No, I'm just saying. But there are some years where there's no
You're absolutely
turnover.
right. Next year,
There's
gonna
no
be
turnover.
and there's no reason why you have to wait till the end of January
Yeah.
to get this done. I'm thinking, though, in this past year where we had a vote count that didn't get certified until almost December 1st.
Correct.
You didn't know who the hell was sitting on the
December 1st, it was certified in the morning. It wasn't even certified. It was certified in around 10 a.m.
So let's say
Actually, it wasn't until that afternoon that people were actually getting their
Yeah,
stuff.
it was...
So there was some question
it was
whether we were
nip
going
and
to
tuck.
see 2 board members. So, yeah, I think if you get it done by,
I'll come up with some
I think you
suggestions
need
for
to,
you.
the board president should be able to appoint people by the voting meeting
Yeah, that shouldn't be controversial.
in December.
I would agree.
I think as part of the,
I think you need to settle your committee stuff in December, so then January can start meetings.
I do too.
That's just
Part of
the
that
global
reorganization
picture.
meeting, I think people have to make their selections. You know, and if it's a new board member and the new board member isn't quite familiar yet, I mean, they're just going to have to make the selection, and the board president is going to have to place that member where they think they'd be best suited.
So I think in
And then,
terms of,
and then at the end of December, you can vote on it.
well, I think that's, so if you go to the top of page 5, line 1, the president shall appoint at the January voting meeting board members to the following standing committees. That should be done December.
Well, you got to
voting
back
meeting.
up then, too. You got to back up to page 4.
It's also on the top of page 5.
You will. I agree with you, but I'm saying if you start there, if you're saying that, hey, look, I have, the board president has to present to the board at the December voting meeting, these are the people that are going to sit on these committees, and you get to vote on them in December at that meeting, then it automatically backs up when someone has to let the president know by. And maybe it has to be by December 1st, by the reorganization meeting.
Okay.
Or it has to be 7 days prior to the voting meeting. And there's no reason why it has to happen in a specific meeting. Right? I mean, nowadays you can email, you can call somebody, you can do whatever you got to do to give them your selections.
Yeah.
You can send them a letter.
All right, so that paragraph changes to December voting meeting, and we add the curriculum and instruction, right?
Yes.
Yes. And I would actually, maybe now I'm thinking about this, what do you just, even if you said by the Friday prior to the voting meeting? Or, a week, it could
Some
be either
voting-
one.
yeah.
But a week prior or the Friday prior to the voting meeting in December.
Is the voting meeting always, is the reorganization, the voting meeting is always, well, we could always change the voting meeting. The voting meeting could be on a Friday.
Well, voting meeting can be committed a whole meeting, it'd be a vote, whatever. We post all of our regular scheduled meetings as voting meetings. I'm just saying that,
A few days before.
yeah, someone who's going to be starting to move people around on committees needs a couple of days to be able to do that.
Okay.
And so if all the selections are in at least by the Friday before, that gives that individual at least a weekend to sit down and think about who's going to be where.
Okay.
Okay? I would even say even more time would be better, like a week beforehand would be better, because if you're out of town on business or something else, or the holidays are approaching, you may not have an opportunity to...
Well, you could. There's a lot of ways you could word it. You could say within 5 days of the reorganization meeting, you would like to have all committee selections in place, so that by the time you get to the voting meeting, you can make the appointment in December.
I would say, looking at the paragraph, board members who desire to participate on any standing committee shall make their desires known to the president no later than 5 days prior to the first meeting following the reorganization meeting.
First voting meeting.
Yeah, if you want to call it voting meeting, you can.
We don't have a... Yeah, I
Whatever you
mean,
want to call that meeting.
we don't have... I mean, our reorganization meeting is our committee of the whole meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
We immediately go right into the committee of
And
the
so
whole.
the next meeting is always the voting meeting, which ends up being 3 weeks later.
You could make that too. You could arbitrarily, when you do your calendar the next time, make it 2 weeks hence, instead of waiting 3. I always thought that was a little strange too.
Well, we want to get back onto the second Monday or whatever.
Well, for 1 month, you're altering your schedule a
That's
little
not
bit.
really-
You advertise it, you announce it. I mean, that's your
But
discussion.
I don't think it's a question of, I like the idea of it's 5 days prior to the voting meeting, whenever the voting meeting takes place.
Okay.
Well, can I make the point?
Sure.
What Dr. Iron was saying about making it earlier, because of the holidays in December, it's always better that time of year to make it a week earlier for people to attend, because of all the holiday festivities. Like this year was what, the 21st? It's the week of Christmas, people are trying to come to your voting meeting. So if you want everything to go turn around faster, why not make it earlier? I understand the point of both sides, but in the want people to come out, want people to be involved, and know what's going on. December's a rough month for everybody. Be anywhere.
I guess that's something we should talk about with the calendar for next year.
Yeah, but that's a
not the
calendar
policy.
issue, not a... It's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. I just think that whatever we put in here can be generic, so it's the December voting meeting and it's 5 days prior to the voting meeting, and then it's up to the board to set whenever the voting meeting is, whether that's December 21st
Right.
or it's December 7th.
These school board meetings make a great Christmas present, though, you have to admit.
That's the key issue, it really is. Before we break for the holidays, we want to have this organization stuff behind us. And that's what we don't do now. We wait until
Yeah,
January and then.
Well, that's been,
Before you know it,
I'm not so
January's
sure
over.
why it's been that way. This has just been this board's practice.
Well, it's because it's been the policy.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's grown out of some practice, and somebody committed it to policy. So
Now we have to change the policy.
Yeah.
Okay, so
my guess is that this has been going on in Daniel Boone for a long, long time. I don't know from this policy when it was. It says only. I don't know why when it was done in March 2010, the previous date wasn't on here. So
Okay, so we're in agreement then. It's December voting meeting and 5 days prior to in terms of notice.
All right.
Appointments.
Let's move on. I have something on 006, Section 1, Parliamentary Authority. Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, including small group rules.
Which line number are you on?
I'm talking, my thing here is on line number, I'm guessing that's line number 4. It says, including small group rules. I looked up small group rules online, and some of the things, it's for board meetings under 12 members. One of the things here, motions do not need to be seconded for small group rules, for Robert Rules of Order, and our policy says we use small group rules. Motions do not need to be seconded, and members can discuss a subject while no motion is pending. We've always functioned, you need a second for action to be taken on a motion, and you cannot discuss unless a motion is on the floor. Now, according to this, it says that we're using the small group rules, and the small group rules say that motions do not need to be seconded, and you can speak when a motion is not on the floor.
Well, this is where we may be not doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
happens all the time.
So,
And this is a pretty big one, too, I'd say.
well, I would say so too, because quite frankly, there's been many times when important subjects come up and people have been muzzled because folks have said, well, look, you can't speak on that issue until there's been a motion.
Yeah.
Or motions have died because no one stepped up to second them.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I'm always surprised that you have to have a motion on the floor before you can discuss
Yeah.
whatever the issue is. Why not discuss the issue first and then make the motion? Because we end up having to amend motions I don't know how many times, and it's got to be a friendly one or it's got to be an aggressive one, and I just find that to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, look, if that's what the small group rules are, and Robert's Rules of Order state that, then we just need to be more aware of what Robert's Rules of Orders and small group rules are as a board. So
And that's not even a policy change. That's just something we need.
people need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we would need to maybe get the solicitor to explain that at some point. And then I have here, let me just read quick. The following actions require unanimous consent. Okay. I'm talking about Section 8, voting. Section A, number 2, that is line 31. It says the following. Section A says the following actions require unanimous consent of all remaining
I'm
members
sorry,
of the board.
can you say that one more time? I was writing
Yeah.
it.
We're talking about Policy 006 Meetings, Section 8, which is entitled Voting. Letter A, number 2 of letter A, that is line number 31 on page 3 of 9. 31 on 3. I'm going to read A first. The following actions require unanimous consent of all the remaining members of the board. Number 2, appoint as secretary to the board of a district of the second class a school director who has resigned his office. We're a district of the third class. That really doesn't affect us at all. Unless we're keeping it in there in case there's a threat of us changing classes, but I don't know why that's been included because it's not relevant to how our district runs, unless it was just copied and
I think
pasted
it
from the
was
school
just copied
code.
and pasted.
Okay,
That's what it looks like.
all right. So
Yeah, I think
we just want
it's
to.
irrelevant for us. It's
Yeah,
not
which is why I'm wondering why it's in our policy, but it doesn't cause any harm. Then again, it doesn't add anything.
Well, it should. If it's not correct, it shouldn't even be in there.
It just can be stricken. We want to strike that. Okay, we're striking number 2 under letter A because it doesn't affect our board.
Well, I wouldn't strike it yet until Mr. Subers had a chance to look at
Okay,
it.
yeah. We're not striking anything until the board votes to strike it.
Where was that?
That was page 3 of
9?
3 of 9. Lines 31 through 33 is A, number 2, right there.
Yeah, I see it. Appoint as secretary to the board of a district of the second class.
And according to number 1, name and classification, we are, the school district of Daniel Boone area is classified as a school district of third class.
I thought there was one other situation that required a unanimous consent of the.
This is all in the school code. I can check
That's
on
okay.
it.
It might be in some other section somewhere, but I thought there was one other condition that would apply, that it requires more than a majority, it needs a unanimous.
Dismissal. You need a 2/3 vote to,
For
I
a
think.
tenured teacher.
If I bring a teacher to the board for
That's-
recommendation,
that's-
you need a 2/3 vote for dismissal.
Isn't that in here? I remember, I read that.
It's in the school code.
It's all-
I mean, it's got to be in the policy
I read
somewhere.
that in here, though. The following require...
Oh, yeah, there it is. It's at the
Yeah.
bottom of page 3.
Following actions required.
See that? You're right, Connor, on page 4, it says dismissal of a tenured teacher.
All right.
So if a tenured teacher were brought before you in the hearing and you voted 5-4, the teacher would retain their job.
Got it.
Okay. Anything else under this policy? Number 6, meetings. Oh, wait, I have something else here. Okay, that's not important. Just a note for myself. I have nothing else here.
Let's see here. Under page 6, section 9, E, just a clerical thing that E shouldn't be there. The substance of all official actions.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, wait a minute. Actions taken. Sorry, that's 2 separate items.
Substance of all actions, all official actions, and then actions taken. What is the difference between D and E? The substance.
Well, the substance of all official actions would be, the subject line of an agenda item. We're
Okay.
going to talk about, dogs in school, and then the action taken is the vote.
Is the vote. All right.
No dogs in school.
Okay.
I can't find the 65 statute here.
So do we have issues still?
No, I'm all right with that.
Okay. I had nothing on 6.1. I think we went through that enough last year. That would be the
unless
teleconferencing.
new board members have comments on that. We're here to start from scratch.
Okay.
So just because 9 people decide that that's what the policy should be, doesn't mean, hey, look, we've got a different set of 9 people here. So if you had, I think you had expressed a concern, so I think you need to bring that, if you still have that concern, you need to bring that forward.
My concern at the time was I don't think it should have been approved without the other board members having a say at that meeting. We're on policy 6.1, the one that was approved after much consternation.
Oh, the teleconference.
Yeah. At that time, I objected to the idea that a lame duck board could decide when 4 new members had been elected. It was more of a philosophical point. I didn't look over this because I wasn't expecting to review it tonight because it was just approved. Of course, if we have something here we'd like to talk about, we could, of course, take it forward. Do we have a phone line down here yet?
Yeah, I think we're moving over to the middle school from this point forward.
Oh, permanently?
Well, until
At least until
we,
the end of the budget season.
Right, until we balance the budget. So the remainder of this fiscal year will probably
Okay.
be there.
That project kind of got lost up in the technology director changeover.
Okay. If we don't have anything here, I'd like to move on to number 7, distribution. this has not been updated in a while, and I know some things here I'd like to talk about. I don't know if we can just eliminate this policy. I'm not sure how important it is now that everything is online. I think we need to talk about the policy being online, because I know we're supposed to give a copy of the policy manual, give a copy to each recognized bargaining agent of a certified bargaining unit. I'm not sure if we do that. I'm going to assume we do. But then it also says a copy shall be kept in each building library and the faculty lounge to be available to employees. I don't know if I should be... so I don't know if it's in the library at all the buildings. I'm not sure if it's in the faculty lounge. I know some buildings have... I don't know how many... I know the high school, I think, has more than one faculty lounge. But I think we should just strike that, because it's online and it's updated online. It's much more easier updating a policy online than going around to the policy manual and inserting pages whenever we pass a new policy or amend a policy. It also saves paper. So I'm not even sure if we need this policy. Unless we just want to amend it to say that, keep the first paragraph, but say, therefore, copies of this therefore, an online copy of this manual shall be available to anybody who would like to access it on the district website. That would be very easy, I think. Then we can get rid of all... we don't have to require... I mean, it also says here that a copy of the manual should be given to all directors of the board. I didn't receive a paper copy. How I interpret this is that a paper copy would be given, not just an online copy.
I think we're going to need Mr. Subers to interpret the citation down there at the bottom of section 3601.
Okay. Well, if he can do that,
what does that entail?
All right.
But a copy doesn't have to be a physical copy.
It doesn't.
I'm sure the laws
It
have
can be an
changed on this
electronic
by
copy
now.
as well. So I think
But I think we need to at least look
in
at...
terms of location, like a copy shall be kept in each building library, in the faculty lounge to be available to employees. Employees isn't even spelled correctly.
Yeah, is that employees?
But I think, as opposed to a copy, a copy shall be available in each building library and available to all employees, I think is probably a better way to put it. I mean, there's no reason for this thing to be...
sitting around, nobody looking at it anyway.
Who knows? You don't have wireless access, whatever the case may be. You need to get to something, look something up.
Then again, all the teachers at the high school do have computers, and at the middle school, I'm sure, and at the elementary schools. But then again, if it's in the library, anybody can look at
I
it.
just showed up today, and unless this thing was sitting here, I wouldn't have the ability to go through this. So, having an extra copy around me too isn't, I don't think, a hardship in any way. It's just making sure that it's been updated. That's the issue.
All right. So we have to update it and make sure that that policy is being followed. Because, I mean, I've looked in the high school library. I didn't see a policy manual. Maybe it's behind the counter or something, but... So just make sure that's being followed. All right, moving on. I believe we are now moving into the programs section. Let me get my table of contents here. All right. Oh, ethics and conflict of interest. Do we have anything to talk about when it comes to that?
Yeah, I noticed in here that I don't think we've been doing this in the past. I don't have an issue with the definitions per se, but when I was reading this, let me just see if I can find it here. There was a point here where people were voting, no member shall during employed in any capacity.
Are you looking at page 3 of 4, line 331? No board member shall, during the term for which he or she was elected or appointed, be employed in any capacity by the district or receive any pay for services rendered to the district except that. Is that what you're looking for?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Here. Okay, so any public official or employee who, in the discharge of his or official duties, would be required to vote on a matter that would result in a conflict of interest shall abstain from voting. I'm up at lines 1, 2, 3, 4, page 3 of 4. That's section 3. Shall be required to vote on a matter that would result in a conflict of interest shall abstain from voting, and prior to the vote being taken, publicly announce and disclose the nature of his or her interest as a public record in a written memorandum filed with the person responsible for recording the minutes of the meeting at which the vote is taken. We haven't been doing that. I mean, so
Right.
there's been multiple times where Mrs. Facette or Mr. McCullough, or it was Mr. Sheen when his wife used to work for the school district, they would abstain from votes.
But they wouldn't.
Or it was Mr. Fiddler when he was doing something with tires and, we were voting on checks or something like that. And they would pull out the one line item specifically so that person could abstain, but there was no
Yeah.
rationale or reason or explanation given as to why somebody abstained for that. So
I remember that now because Linda used to try to keep up with that, because I remember her giving me a document once and saying you have to fill out your reason why you're abstaining and sign this document. I did.
yeah.
And then after that, it seemed like it just went by the wayside. No one did that. But you're right. I can remember that now.
And so, I'm sure this applies to some statute in the school code that says this. This is probably taken verbatim out of there, but I'm just sort of thinking that when you sit there and say publicly announce, prior to the vote being taken, you have to publicly announce and disclose the nature of his or her interest as a public record in written memorandum filed with the person responsible. So I think that you have to, one, not only fill out that form, but you have to publicly state before the vote is taken why you're abstaining.
That's what the policy says.
And we haven't been doing that. So I don't know how we reinforce that, whether this becomes policy guidelines for the administration so that when there's a motion on the table or something like that, there's a
I think
reminder.
you write this. I think you take this paragraph and you put it in our minutes, our agenda rather, on every meeting, every voting
Just
meeting,
print it on there.
so that when we get it as board members, we're reminded if there's something that you plan on abstaining on in this next vote. Use the attached document to, please fill out the attached document and prepare to follow this procedure. So we don't forget, because, we'll forget again.
And this would be something Mrs. Barr could always tell us too.
Well,
Yeah,
it's easy
she
to put
can.
it. It's easy to put it on, because look, secretaries could change.
Yeah.
Superintendents.
Yeah,
board
I'm
members,
saying in
they all
addition.
change.
In addition.
So the idea is to put something in place that those who come from behind us will be able to follow. So I like Frank's suggestion, which is it's not a big deal for us to put right now on the Word documents, which are our agendas, this thing,
Which
this paragraph. Okay, so
Same way
that,
we have public participation,
yeah. So
section,
hey,
you
look,
have
even
this
if you get to
section.
the end of the meeting and somebody abstained on something, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Remember, back here, folks, you're supposed to announce why you abstained before the voting.
And it's
took
just
place.
a one-page thing that you fill out, so that should be attached to every agenda as well, just in case.
Yeah.
I can just print it out.
And that
Or you
doesn't
can
even
fill it out right then
That's
and
right,
there.
yeah.
and
that
hand
doesn't
it in.
require a policy change either. So that could just be something the administration.
No, that
does.
was just something I had read as part of this review, which is good for me. It's good for all of us to kind of
Yeah.
read these things. And I recognize that we just weren't following the policy. So, and maybe we need to be putting together a list, Dr. Otto, of all the things that we should be doing that we haven't been doing, and so that we can kind of, bring that to the attention of the board.
Yeah.
Hey, look, folks, by the way, past practice has been this, but what we should be doing is this. And
Is there a highlighter in this room, Dr. Otto? Do you know?
there may be one.
No, I'm sure there's one back there. Blue, yellow,
Bring both of them, actually, please.
orange,
Just that's good.
got the whole rainbow here.
Thank you. To mark the things we haven't been doing.
Does anybody want any water or drink anything?
Can you get me a Coke?
Frank,
No, thank you.
Dr. Otto?
I'll pass.
Anybody else can do more water? 3 members of the public?
No, thank you.
You sure?
Thank you for asking that.
We're all in this together. You guys deserve badges for being here. Unless you're being paid to be here, but that's good.
All right, so that is something we're going to publish in the agenda. Thank you. All right, moving on. I think we're out of all the board policies now. If we can.
You know what? There's something else in here too.
All right.
I recall, and it made you got to talk to Dr. Suber, or, Brian Subers about this. This talks about how any board member may, after resigning from office, be elected to the position of teacher, or someone can become the solicitor, and so on and so forth. And I thought there was a law passed last year as part of all the reforms that were put in place that said that there was some lessening of restrictions in terms of board members could be elected to posts, whether it's superintendent or whatever. So I remember reading in some of the legislative updates there were some changes in that regard. I don't recall specifically what those changes were, but I think that needs to be reviewed so that whatever those changes are, they're reflected in this policy.
All right, so Mr. Super, Brian Supers will look over that. All right. Okay. All right. Unless you have anything else to talk about when it comes to these board issues, I think we can move on to 100 programs. And we'll see how far. I don't have anything here to talk about looking at my notes up until policy 107, the adoption of textbooks. Now, I do have something. Now, I don't know how we want to go forward with this, if we want to alternate between policy and administrative guideline.
Before we get too far
All right, go ahead.
I mean, these, section 101, 102, 102 doesn't have a date. 101 is August 26, 1991.
We want to change. This is when the board, I think, should discuss if we want to change what our philosophy is.
Well, this whole section is rife with some of the older policies that are referring to statutes and things that do not even exist anymore.
And they need to be looked at by
Specific case, it's just a time thing. Things have changed.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm even thinking here in terms of I'm looking at section 10 or policy 101, philosophy of education. You get down to that bottom two paragraphs. The K through 12 educational program will maintain a strong basic curricular foundation that is flexible enough to adjust to changing needs. Well, we just eliminated half of kindergarten last year. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? So maybe that shouldn't just say K through 12. It should just say the educational program, whatever that entails.
I mean, this is one of those sections when you look. I'm just going to be very specific. When you look at the end of the section, it says PA Code Title 22, Section 5.13. That's been stricken from the Pennsylvania Title 22 Code. All of this is now, philosophy of education is a statement that you make as part of strategic planning, which now falls under Chapter 12 or Chapter 4 of State Board Regulations. So this
isn't important at all.
No. Don't. I think a board and a school district should put down on paper its mission statement,
but it's
and
part
its
of the
philosophy.
strategic
But
planning.
it's part of this. There's
redundant.
a statement in the strategic plan that could be. This policy could be stricken and totally rewritten. First of all, the legal citation is wrong. It's no longer. I don't want to say wrong. It's no longer accurate. There's no Chapter 5 left. Chapter 5 used to be curriculum and instruction. Now it's Chapter 4. Okay. The state, in its wisdom over the years, through the 90s, changed the codes, and now they have to be reflected in the policy.
Well, can you think you can get with your staff and do a review of these? Think you?
Well, that's what I'm suggesting. Some of this will say.
I think that this should go, but it's
no. What I would like to do is we'll come back with a recommendation as to how we think it should be. If it's already satisfied through the strategic plan, you may want to write a policy. I don't think, as written, this policy is particularly relevant. It's just a statement that needs to be revised. I mean, I think it's important that you have a philosophy of education. There's nothing in the school code that says in your policies you even have to state what your philosophy of education
I think that applies to Section 102 as well.
Well, there's a whole series here of things.
Yeah, I mean,
in terms of
talking about self-esteem and citizenship.
Well, here, let me just say something. Chapter 5 used to say all those things.
Right.
There is no more Chapter 5.
That's my point, is that these all go hand in glove with what you're saying.
Those were all back in the day, let's see, I was in education, that was about the time I was working as an assistant principal in a high school, and this used to be the old standards that the schools used to run by. Now everything's under all the goals of education are spelled out under PSSA and strategic planning. So these first two need major revision.
Okay.
The sites don't even make sense anymore.
So I think that should be something the administration should come back to us.
No, as I was reviewing this today, quite honest with you, I didn't pay as close attention to your board policies because those are the ones you have to work on. But when I started getting into this 100 series, these are the things that affect us administratively. So these will be policies that we can save a lot of time on task here in this meeting, and we can come back to you with a complete review of them.
Okay.
Mrs. Trainer would have been here tonight to give you some background, but she unfortunately was able to attend this meeting. She is one slated to start attending these meetings as a person who's been, kind of the point person for getting policy started in the district.
And she will be here at our next meeting, which will be on February 8th. So you're going to go through here. I have a thing on Policy 103 I'd like to talk about.
Well, yeah, okay.
Because if the administration will come back to us with new recommendations for those. The affirmative action program for school and classroom practices, a lot of this is legal, but looking into this, I noticed that we list these things everywhere: race, color, creed, religion, sex, ancestry, national origin. I think we need to include handicap or disability here just because
It does. This is old language. This is wrong. This needs to be fixed.
Just keep in mind, it should match the Pennsylvania or national guidelines here. Because I know this one mentions, so the next one, handicap condition, then this one does not, whereas it should for 103. I'm just saying, I think they should all match the entire district. All these discrimination things need to match up, and they should be similar to each other. We can't have one protected class.
To be quite honest, you may not, because it is a federal, you may not have to have it even. This could be stricken, and it would still not remove anybody's
these
protections.
Policies, what do they accomplish? They just state something. I'm not sure if they're even necessary, like you said. If we can just strike them, why not? If they're not,
and then I'll talk to Subers about that.
In terms of striking them, I would say, just make sure that they reflect whatever, the laws are. Mm-hmm. And then there's no harm in leaving them there for reference, because if somebody doesn't know what the affirmative action policy is of the federal government or the state of Pennsylvania, but you can certainly look into your locally, someone could go to our policy and guideline procedures. And what does it say about affirmative action? And I feel like I'm being discriminated against. Well, it's right here in your policy. Okay, fine, it's there. I think it's just another resource that makes that statement available to folks. Remember, this isn't just for us as board members, it's for the members of the public, it's for the members of the
students.
Now, it's school district, it's for the students, it's for everybody. So.
It did seem to be my opinion that when I spoke with Dr. Otto, part of what we were doing was trying to eliminate non-necessary policies. I'm not sure if that's something that we, as a committee, I think, do we want to just keep it how it is and just revise and keep them for reference, or do we, if they don't contribute?
Well, I don't think if anything's, it doesn't contribute unless you feel like you're being discriminated against, right? I mean, suddenly if I feel like I'm being discriminated against, I'm going to go look at the code, right? I mean, in terms of the policy, and the policy says, well, see Pennsylvania State Code XYZ or federal, code. This, that's a whole different matter. But
any attorney will tell you to always be able to point to where something is written to back it up.
I don't see something that important. In terms of affirmative action, I think you leave in our policy. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know. Frank?
Leaving it in will not harm anything. It's just...
If we're looking to cut down the number of policies, I'm sure we'll run into stuff later that we can skinny it down or combine. I mean, maybe you can combine the two of them. Mm-hmm. If that's what we're looking to do, is get the number down so you don't have two sections. Maybe it's affirmative action should apply to both employment and classroom practices.
You're actually talking about Title VI, Federal Title VI and Federal Title VII non-discrimination 14th Amendment protections, if you want to get technical. So they're equal protection issues under the United States Constitution. So I think we can find room to put them in our policy.
Yeah. Well, if you want to just combine them into one.
Yep.
Save a piece of paper.
All right.
The only thing I saw in 5, maybe this is nomenclature, and I get hung up on it, but on line 7,
Which
105, curriculum development. It says, to this end, the curriculum shall be evaluated, adapted, and developed on a continuing basis in accordance with a plan for curriculum growth. And then at the bottom of the page, it talks about something to be deemed necessary for the continuing growth of the instructional program. I would just change that to improvement. I don't necessarily see growth as something that's a good thing. growth is growth. Improvement is something we should all be striving for. So you don't need to necessarily have to grow a program to provide a better.
Well,
It's
again,
not that big a deal,
Yeah.
but
I would offer to you
I
that
think
this
it's part of that culture of, hey, bigger is better.
Yeah.
And, you know,
actually, the policy 105 needs to be totally redone
Okay.
All right.
because I'm going to draw
Again,
you.
you're referring to PA Title
22.5 is
22.5.
gone.
Yeah.
This is based on something that doesn't even exist. We need to make curriculum development consistent with practice and current school code.
All right. Well, if you're gonna come back to us with an updated policy, there's no point in discussing it now until you come back. All right.
Well, I'm just putting it on the list. I mean, these things take time to develop. I mean,
Okay.
this isn't a 2-week turnaround with these things. These take time.
Okay.
So they will go on the list, but I'm just telling you that you can't leave that there. 22.5 doesn't exist anymore.
Same with adoption of courses of study. There's still 22.5.
22.5 does not exist.
All right, now this is this is from 1995, so a little bit more up to date. Adoption of textbooks. I was wondering, when was the last time this board voted to approve textbooks? Because that's something that is left at the discretion of the board whether to approve textbooks or not.
Any time, any textbooks. I don't think we've bought textbooks in quite a while.
Well, I mean, I've seen
Well,
textbooks.
we haven't voted on them since I've been on the board.
I can't imagine we haven't got any new textbooks in
No.
that long.
As a matter of fact, I would change that one word on section C, where selection guidelines, letter C. Textbooks currently in use shall be periodically evaluated for their continuing usefulness and relevance. It should say, instead of periodically, it should say annually. I think you should consciously look at these books every year and how long is this going to take if you're doing it on a yearly basis and say, yep, information in this book is still relevant, can still keep our kids
Yeah, and then we don't need to.
educated properly,
Yeah.
and then move on. But periodically is
I think
too
the board.
wishy-washy.
I don't know. These textbooks are expensive. I think it would be good if the board looked at it. And I don't know. I'm not saying that. I don't know how we purchase new ones, but I think it would be good for the board to look at these textbooks. And if the board doesn't see a reason that they need to be changed, then we should just keep them.
Well, quite frankly, I think there should be a time for board members to look at textbooks.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not annually, but certainly biannually.
No,
so
not the school board. I wasn't referring to the school
No,
board.
I know what you're talking about. You're
it
talking about the
says
administration.
Superintendent shall
Yeah. I'm taking this to I know down in Texas there have been a lot of big fights
Yeah.
over textbooks and the content of these textbooks. And individual school boards in their communities are saying, well, wait a minute, I don't want this type of material in the textbooks for our children, or this type of material that's in the textbooks for our children isn't even historically accurate, And so I think, this is my 5th year on the board. No one's ever presented to me what the textbooks are in the school district. I've relied on the administrative team to make sure that what's being taught to our children is relevant and accurate. But maybe on a biannual basis, so that you're certain that every 2 years, if you're a board member, at least one time during your term, there's an opportunity to review textbooks.
Mm-hmm. I think that is very important. Additionally, I'm just looking at the 2011-2012 budget, because I remember on the presentation you gave us, Dr. Otto, there was a chunk of the pie, 5% for books and supplies. The board has the responsibility of approving textbooks. That's laid out by the school code, and we have a line in here for books. I know it's not just textbooks, but they need to be approved. I don't know when the last time, because I've been coming to these meetings for a while, and I don't remember a textbook ever coming before the board for approval. So I think that's just something that needs to be done.
What do you think, Dr. Otto?
I don't think our practice follows our policy.
And I'm not sure if it's like that with other districts too.
I think you need to follow your policy.
Yes, I do too, which is why
And
I think
if we're not following it, then, and this is something again that in my 3.5 plus years on the board, I don't remember any formal textbook adoption taking place by the board. So we'll have to go back administratively and discuss why that has been that way and move
very
forward.
Good. All right, so that's been addressed.
That's my most tactful answer.
And I think that's a good answer as long as we can get the administration will come back to us, and we will be approving textbooks if textbooks are being purchased that have not been approved yet.
I think the reason why textbooks weren't being brought up was because of no more spending in the classrooms. The teachers had a restriction on what they could purchase and what they couldn't. So a lot of the teachers thought, just in general, that books were out of question. So I think that was
You're probably right.
I don't think a lot of textbooks have been bought in the past couple of years, quite
But
frankly.
I'm just thinking, no, but even before we had a budget issue, you know, in
Mr.
terms,
Robbins.
I'm saying,
That was back when.
yeah, I mean, 2006, when, you know, I.
Yeah, some of that may predate me. I don't.
Yeah, even when he was superintendent, they had classroom restrictions.
Yeah,
And that's why a lot of teachers thought, well, with $1,000 or whatever small amount of money that they were able to spend, books.
yeah, the teacher shouldn't be out buying the textbooks, that's the school's
No, but they are not
responsibility, right?
making a recommendation
I see.
for the superintendent to consider buying them new textbooks.
This
My
textbook.
understanding was that was like Anne Marie Trainor's sort of domain, and the building principals would sort of sit down, and I guess with the department heads. I mean, you guys explain it to me.
I was going to say, it depends on the material that you're talking about. That, like, I've helped select multiple textbooks since I've been here, and I came in 2003. But it's a matter of looking at your curriculum. If it's outdated, like I teach math, is it aligned with your standards? Is there something that we need to change? Is the material relevant? And then you look at it based on the state standards and the curriculum and things you're talking to, and you go out and you call book companies, and you get bunches and bunches of samples, and they send you, and then you sit down as a department, or as teachers who teach that are people who have experience in it, and then you sit down and you review all of those textbooks, and then you see, well, this is what I'd like. Henry, what's the budget like? Is it possible? I've been told no before. I've been told yes. Well, we can do it. We can't get that many. We have to hold off. You know, it's been every different answer under the sun. But it's a process, and then we take it to the department heads, and then it goes to the principal and everything.
So this is
Yeah, I think the issue is it from there, it never went from the building principal
To the superintendent, to the board.
superintendent or to the board. Because I know in the 4 years that I've sat here, there's never been a textbook put in front of me to approve or
I've
not.
been at other boards where they bring like the display models that we get. Like we get this fancy looking box with all this stuff and the materials, like because that's how they send it to. I've been at other board meetings in other districts where that box comes and sits in school board meetings. It's been approved. I mean, not that they're big.
And your
giant
policy
boxes,
says it should be clearly.
but-
So that needs to be
Yeah,
something
well,
that
the other
happens.
part of this, I mean, I've seen, whether it was on 60 Minutes or 2020 or whatever it was, where, they were going into school districts across the country, and there's only like 2 or 3 manufacturers of all school books across the nation. And, they all have different covers and different pictures, but the information inside the textbooks was completely inaccurate. Dates, who discovered America, what date that happened, all sorts of different things were completely wrong. And teachers were like, wait a minute, okay, scratch that out, that's not right, and they have to teach something else as opposed to what was in the textbook. And this was just going on over and over and over again. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars being spent for erroneous text.
Information.
So I don't know whether that's an issue with our textbooks or not, whether you've encountered it in the math department
There's always mistakes, but nothing
Glaring.
now.
Yeah.
And it might be different in the history textbook than the math textbook, too.
And I know with us when we talk budget and things, most of things when we talk grants. That Ambry has, I think there's a grant coming this way or that way that could, we could do that. And a lot of our stuff has been put into.
It's not just about the spending on the books, it's about the philosophical quality of the books as well. It's the fact that they need to be approved by this democratic body and not just by Mrs. Trainer, or it needs to come in front of the board, because that's laid out in the school code, isn't it? That's just not our policy, but textbook adoption is that
It's one of the functions of a school board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's something that needs to happen.
All right, well, so that policy then needs to be sort of...
Oh, there's something else here. I'm sorry to
updated and brought so this, and then obviously we need to remind, maybe on an annual basis, of these are things that fall into the domain of our responsibilities. And quite frankly, that can kind of segue into this issue of developing a calendar year agendas. We sort of talked about this before, whether it's for committees and or the board as a whole, so that hey, look, every March we're going to talk about textbooks, and that just goes on the agenda, because so that we don't have an issue of whether or not we remember or don't remember to follow the policy. It's built into the system.
I would, yes, and the way I think, just a suggestion as to how to handle that would be, which is why I pushed so hard when I first came here as superintendent for a committee called Curriculum and Instruction or something like that, because we had a big hole, and that's why a lot of these things weren't getting done. And I think it would be proper work for a curriculum committee on an annual basis to take this task on, because textbooks and curriculum go hand in hand.
No, I know that, but what happens, so you start from you drive it down into the committee, right?
Correct.
So
And then they bring it back to you.
Agenda item that says, hey, look, I don't know, when do you guys normally make these decisions?
It can be any time of
It could be
year.
any time.
Okay, so
generally,
let's just say it's-
generally goes hand in glove with the budget process.
All right, well, let's say it's October.
Correct.
That the review has to start because you need approval by the board in,
Or to approve the budget.
May, you're approving it. So, by a certain time, then it has to be in front of the board for discussion in March, and then therefore,
Right.
that backs it up for the committee that has to be addressing it in
September.
whatever
Almost the
the
start of the
time
year.
is, okay?
Yeah.
And so by putting it on the committee's agenda
Mm-hmm.
and a voting agenda, you've driven it down the board level, you've driven it down into a committee agenda that has to precede that, right?
Correct. That would be my recommendation. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can take it on as a full board and just put it on your
It should be on as a full board. What I'm saying is that
the actual work.
if it's on our agenda as a full board to address in, let's say it's March,
Mm-hmm. Right.
well, then we know it's coming
Right.
in March, then that means
Back it up to the committee.
subcommittee should know that, hey, look, we need to be making a recommendation
Correct.
on this
Correct.
before March.
Same
So,
process as with the course of studies for the
Same
high
thing the
school course
finance committee
selection.
does.
Yeah.
We need to be talking about budget in,
October already.
October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay?
I want to mention here quick, number 7 on page 2 and 2 here still on adoption of textbooks. A list of all approved textbooks and/or series shall be prepared and maintained. It shall be updated annually by the administration. I'm not sure, is there any way a board member can get access to that list? Is that being...
First of all, I can't be honest to say whether or not that's even being done. I'm sure that there's some inventory somewhere, so that would be something, if Mrs. Trainer were here, she could probably, it's kind of in her
All right.
direct domain.
Just want to make sure that is getting done, because some of these things, it's buried in here and you wouldn't even know it just by looking. You have to...
Well, I just have a note here, take a whole look at this whole policy.
All right. Okay, very good. Are we comfortable moving on to policy 108, lesson plans? There's something I marked here. Let me just quick read over it quietly here. I just think it could use a little bit of updating on letter B, Guide 3 Standards, letter B. While teachers are required to be thoroughly prepared for each daily lesson, plans may be prepared for each lesson or on a long-term basis, for example, units of work, whichever is most appropriate. Materials to be used in a lesson, such as duplicated material, cassette tapes, films, film strips, transparencies. Just maybe a little bit of updating. That could be an administrative thing.
Well, I think this needs to be pulled and redone.
All right.
Well, I think this gets to an issue that has come up before, which is uniformity. We were sort of talking that there needs to be uniformity in terms of lesson plans. Like, if you've got somebody let's talk about the elementary school level. You've got 3 elementary schools, and, at the end of the day, a first grader here should be learning the same thing as a first grader in the second school is learning the same things as the first grader in the third school. Or even within a school, if you've got 5 sections of 5th graders at the middle school or 6th graders at the middle school, every teacher's got to be teaching the same thing. It should, you can't have one teacher who's going to say, well, look, I'm going to give essays, and that's how I'm going to provide grades, and another teacher saying, well, we're going to do vocabulary tests, and that's how I'm giving the grades, and the third teacher's doing something completely different. How can you compare apples to apples in terms of the education these kids are getting?
I'd like to say something and add on to that quickly. I'm sorry to interrupt. We have a class at the high school, the health class, and you have 3 teachers teaching that, and they are completely different. You have one class which is worksheets, and you have another class which is test, project. They're completely different, yet they're graded. They're both weighted the same. They're the same class, but they're completely different levels of intensity, I'd say, and things like that. They need to be corrected, and you can't have one class and another class that are the same class in the handbook, in the course selection guide, that are being run, I don't want to say completely, but pretty much completely differently.
I don't know how you address that. I mean, I'm not a teacher, I'm not an administrator, but
That's
I think
not a lesson planning issue.
you.
That's an instruction issue.
I was going to say, and at the high school, we're currently, all of us at the department level are,
In math, you mean?
no, building-wide, that's right now, we're all trying to come with common assessments. That's been our push this year.
That's an instruction
new
issue.
thing
Yeah,
this year.
I was going to say, that's what we as departments and teachers have recognized that, and we're all
All right.
trying to get on the same
That's
page.
part of the academic goal setting that I've referred to you in
Yeah.
other meetings that I'm doing
Well, I'm
with
glad
the
We're in the middle of
teachers.
it.
All right, I'm glad that's being
Well,
addressed.
I'm
Yeah.
thrilled to hear that because
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, and quite frankly, we're always sitting here and saying to ourselves, I know as a board member I am, how are you measuring academic success for these students, okay? And everybody's going to teach a class a little bit differently. But at the end of the day, everybody should be taking the same test, right? And so if I'm one teacher and I'm giving a certain type of test that I wrote, and you're a different teacher and you wrote a different type of test, well, how do you know each one's being tested on the same material and understands the same? It should be the same test everybody takes at the end of the year.
Common standards and the common, like, everything statewide, at every level is going that way. And we
The
are-
state's trying to get to that level with Common Core standards, and it's been a battle. It's been
Yeah,
very,
but
very
we
difficult.
internally ought to be doing that. So you know what I'm saying? Like, if I've got twins and they're in separate classes, they should be getting the same test at the end, or at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, whatever it is, so that they can say, "Well, how'd you do, Jimmy? Well, I got number 7 wrong. Oh, I got it right." I mean, it's the same number 7, right? It's
Yeah.
not.
Well, and there's flexibility with it, because you always have the different, there's also the differentiated instruction component where what's appropriate for which student, and, all of that, making it appropriate for students, and who's there and who's not there, and fairness, and all of that.
Well, what do you mean by that?
In the fact that you don't want to hand students and everybody has a different philosophy about it. You don't necessarily want to give your period 1 the same exact test you give your period 9, because period 9 has an advantage going in because period 1
Kids
has
talk.
already said it, they've already talked, it's already out, or there's students who are absent. So you have a student who wasn't there, and then 2 days, and they chose not to be there that day. It's sometimes sick, but sometimes it's because they wanted the extra time to review or talk to their buddies to find out what was on the test so they can come in and take it. So there's that component of it. So teachers create different versions, testing the same skill, maybe like in math, using a different problem, asking the question in a different manner, things along that line.
Sure.
But then there's also the special education component, which testing the same topic, but not testing the
Special
skill of the
education.
same-
I think
Yeah,
special
that's a
education is a
different-
whole different.
But it also
I guess I'd
comes
have
in
to
a
ask whatever
differentiated
committee members
instruction,
were there.
which
I
isn't
mean, I don't
special ed
have
per
a-
se, but you have to differentiate for the different needs of your students,
That's
even
right.
if they're not identified. So it runs the whole component of,
Mhm.
you can't expect this test to be the same exact test as this one. They're all testing the same things and hopefully in the same manner or in the same pen, and that's what we're working on at the high school level to do. But you wouldn't see this 1, 2, 3, 4, number 9 being the same as number 9, the exact same problem because of the many different issues that are involved with it. And I know I worked in the middle school my first year. We're working on aligning curriculum and reviewing to try to make sure we're covering things at the right time. That's an ongoing process that everybody does or tries to do at every level, but they were doing it when I was there, so where it's happening there as well.
And I'm glad this is being addressed at the high school. I hope it's being addressed at the middle school, too. Because so often I think we forget about the middle school.
I think where you have to worry about it most is in the elementary level, because you have different schools. You have Birdsboro, Hadley, Monocacy. When those kids from the elementary move into the middle school, they're at extremely different levels.
I think Anne Marie and she can speak to it. I want to say she's working. I want to remember there's conversations about the binders and the things that they're doing at their level to make it consistent, so that every first grade teacher is doing this. So that because you realize as you go, like there's pockets of things missing, and it's not hard to trace back to where this was missed or that was missed. And there's been so many changeover in staff over the past 10, 15 years that they're working on making sure that we have a bunch of material documents that are out there for all teachers, whether you're a new teacher, whether you've been here, that are available for teachers to use and be able to be consistent through the years, that we're not losing a topic or a strategy or whatever that was working. just because we're losing some of the more experienced teachers, or just because of whatever reason, people in grade levels transfer positions. So I think that was all, they've been doing that for several years.
I do remember her talking about those policy books, or the books, the binders.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to ask the committee quick, how much longer do you want to go? Do you want to end at, what time do you want to end? I don't mind. It's up to you guys. And Dr. Otto, I guess.
Dr. Otto will be at work tomorrow morning, tired or not.
I don't think we go much longer.
Maybe 9:15?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
How many more?
Andrew,
we have a whole lot
you want
more.
to jump over to 308 tonight? Before,
What else do you want to do tonight? Or maybe we can always do that February 8th, too, and let's, if we want to do tonight, that's fine.
I can tell you, just given, let me take you to 112, and then we can, because that's kind
I
of
want to mark which
policy.
ones we got done here quick.
I can tell you that any of these policies in this book that got the pages are going yellow, they need work, and you need us to administratively begin to tell you what work needs to be done.
yellow in your book.
Well, policy 108, lesson plans, it needs work.
Yeah, lesson plans, I think,
Yeah.
guidance counseling's in here.
That's guidance counseling, section 22. That's
Special
another.
education.
The state chapter that they have listed there is non-existent anymore.
Yeah, I'm
in this
looking.
policy.
Yeah, I'm seeing here the superintendent is directed to annually recommend to the board the employment and retention of such staff, things like that. So that, yeah, you can tell by the font which ones need to be looked at.
Well, I mean, I think special education, as you looked at, vocational education.
Actually, special ed is probably fairly, because it's a federal law, and that one probably
Yeah,
doesn't need a lot, but it does need some.
There's no date on this thing.
No,
so-
it needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just make sure these things are in compliance with the current.
it was typed on a typewriter or something.
To be honest with you, we have the resource of using PSBA and looking at PSBA. They probably have a new one that is a model that we should probably use, and I can see where you pull this whole thing and reinsert the new one because it's more up to date, it's more current.
Well, when I run our student persistence program at the high school, and it's similar, but the forms and documents that are on there aren't what we're currently using.
Right, and things change very quickly, and policy has a tendency to lag behind practice. I've found that no matter where I've been, it's my 35th year in education, policy always lags behind practice.
Do the forms need to be as part of the policy?
Generally, the forms get included as part of the administrative guideline. You always want your policy to be a more general statement and your administrative guideline, the implementation of that policy. But these things, this whole 100 series minus...
Yeah, I mean, there's 113 which talks about field trips. I mean, it says we're approving those field trips which are planned to keep children out of the district overnight or longer. My understanding, we're approving all the field trips.
Yeah, there's something here I checked.
Quite frankly, there aren't any field trips going on.
Well, I'm just saying, though, the ones that are...
During the day, they've been budgetarily sliced.
Well, our kids they're self-funded. I mean,
Oh,
we
the
approve
self-funded ones,
field
yes.
trips all the time.
Yes.
And this doesn't distinguish between self-funded and district funded. So it says all field trips.
And I know for certain that some high school classes, they go on trips, like the senior class, they go to Shady Maple. That, I'm not sure if we approve that as a field trip, but according to policy, for purposes of this policy, a field trip shall be defined as any journey by pupils away from the school premises, which is an integral part of an approved course of study, which means those bonus trips, I'll say, are not field trips by this policy.
I guess the long and short of what I'm saying is that a lot of these policies are going to take a very serious combing through administratively, and they're going to take time because each one of these is going to require major discussion on the part of the board and relook at.
Well, I don't know what we're supposed to do then if these policies aren't, if we can't discuss them tonight because they're going to be updated. I mean, what's the point of discussing?
Well, I think in the overall scheme of the policy review committee, that's what you're saying. You're directing me and the administration to take a look at all of these.
Particularly the dated ones.
Yeah.
I think we ought to, just to move things along, I think we ought to go to 122. I mean, all these other ones preceding that, I think Dr. Otto, take a look at PASBA. You can, use your own discretion as administration, but come back to us with, hey, look, this one should go, this one should stay. These are the recommendations we're making on X, Y, and Z. We talked about an extended athletic season competition. This is from 1988. The
Before
board
you go-
recognizes the importance of extended season. For the purpose of this policy, the extended season interscholastic athletes shall include PIA activities relating to competitive sports complex games, blah, 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 blah. The board reserves the right to review recommendations for extended season competition activities which are formulated by the secondary principal and athletic director.
There's an administrative guideline you'd be interested in, I think, Mr. Basil, 122, which lays out the regular PIAA seasons for interscholastic athletic activity shall be identified as listed. I'll give it to you here. I think that ties right in with what that policy says. You probably do, but if you just want to look at it quick without flipping. 122. He has one. I'll just take that back. It also has the pay that we're supposed to pay them for their extra time.
Well, we have been, I think that goes to the issue, the heart of the matter that we were talking about.
Yeah.
We have been paying these guys for doing this stuff. I do remember this revision. This happened when the coach's addendum to the DBEA contract was approved by the board. This got into that issue of paying people for these extra games. And now that, by extension, is trying to be applied, I think, in some format to this issue of when does the band season end and who says when it ends. So I think, I'm not making any suggestions tonight, but if we need to have a separate policy here that talks about an athletic season, doesn't talk about an extracurricular, quote-unquote, season.
Yeah.
And so whether this needs to be, we need to keep athletics separate and talk about extracurriculars in and above that, or you're going to make one extracurricular policy. I think that now we're going to run into some sort of contractual issue because this part is now part of the DBEA contract. And what I don't want to see happening is any more authority in that regard being turned over into some contractual issue. I think this stuff always needs to be at the discretion of the board to change at will, depending on who sits on the board and when and what the needs are. The problem with the contractual constraint is you're locked into that no matter what it is for the period of the contract. You don't get to revisit it until the contract ends.
Yeah.
And demand times may demand that you address things a little bit differently. So,
Yeah, this could be, you could do with some creative rewording, I think, incorporate the band issue right into this guideline.
but what I don't want to have happen is
Oh, I understand where you're going with that, but I'm just saying from a policy standpoint.
whether you have two separate policies, you have
Right.
one and the same, I don't think is necessarily an issue. You can call it the
You could have
extended extracurricular
This
season.
is what I would
but-
recommend you use the numbers, 122.
122A
1.
or 20. That's fine. My concern is that we have. I don't want a coach making the determination or the building principal making the determination as to when
The
a season ends or what entails a season. That's the board's domain
Yeah.
and authority.
It's to your discretion.
Yeah, it's completely in the board's discretion to say this is what the season is and this is when it ends, and that's what the salaries and everything else are going to follow.
So I just want to be clear here. Into the DBEA contract, we have the football season is defined as the league season. How it's written here, cheerleading is defined as the regular seasons of the respective teams. That is in the DBEA contract, correct?
No, I think with the way I don't have the copy of the contract with me, but the contract I think points to the policy.
Right.
So the policy now defines what is part of this regular
Okay.
season, and therefore part of the regular compensation, and what is an extended season, and therefore entitles folks to additional funds.
So we could
So
just
the
say
minute that the football team enters, say they qualify for the playoffs, the subsequent game after that kicks in.
So we could just say, we could change the policy to say, you know what, the season extends from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. We don't need to use these end dates for the season. We can just extend it, and then we don't have to pay that $25, that $30.
That's
Is
a
that what you're
contractual
saying?
issue.
Well, that, I think you need to talk, we'd have to discuss that with legal counsel. If that's
Okay.
the end game, is to say, look, whether we're paying for these extra games or not, I think that's a budget and that's
Well, I think that's a
contractual
contractual
discussion.
issue that you, exactly.
I think, as far as I'm concerned, from a policy perspective, I don't think PIAA or a coach or whoever should be determining for the school district what a season is or how many events are in a season. I think that should always remain in the domain of the board. And that can change from year to year.
And the PIAA doesn't set the seasons for a regular season. They set, it can begin and end here, but they don't say you have to have, 10, if you want to take a week off in the middle of the season, you could certainly as a board say, well, we're only going to play 6 football games. But to be part of this league, if you're part of a league, and they say, well, you have to compete, then you get tied in. So there are a lot of different factors that come into play.
Yeah, but I guess what my point is as a board, you want to be able to say, look, the season starts September 1st and ends December 9th. If that's what we want to define the season as, then that's what we define the season as. And if next year we want to define the season as September 1st and January 2nd, then that's within the domain of the board. Or we want to define the season as 10 regular games and then any playoff games that's within the domain of the board. Or if it's, when it comes to the band issue, hey, look, it's these events. It's the parade at Halloween. It's the parade at Memorial Day. It's the parade at this, and it's whatever competitions fall in between. I mean, that's within the domain of the board.
Yeah.
Instead of someone saying, well, look, I've just decided now that,
season ends on
I'm
this
not
date.
going to, my season's going to be this. I mean, okay. I think that's the problem we were sort of running into. Someone just said, well, look, I just decided now that these 3 events are no longer part of my season, therefore I deserve extra compensation, or if you're not going to pay me, then we're not going to have the events. I don't see why the board would abdicate its responsibility and its authority in that to someone that's in our employ. I mean, that's crazy to me. So that's where I'm coming from on it. And so whatever the policy is that needs to be created, I think needs to reflect that. I'm one guy, so.
I agree with Mr. Basil. I think the board has to have that is the responsibility of the board to set these seasons. Why would we abdicate that, like you said, to another body when we can say?
I think it should be standard across the board that the season ends from the first football game to their last championship game. That's their season.
Well, let's not just limit it to football.
No, and therefore, band would follow that season. And like Connor said, the entire year. Football, if you look at the football budget, we're paying football salaries March, April, not May, but June. No one's playing football, but there's salaries being paid for the football team. The season should start from the first day of school to the last day of school. So whatever falls in that calendar year, now I know you might not be able to start this until the contract's up, but that's what I would recommend that the board should look into, the calendar year of the school. I mean, we're paying, now I only know the football budget because I had that one pulled out, but why are we paying salaries in March, April, and June?
The compensation they receive is for the time that they put in during the football season. I don't know how it's spread out over the year, but that's a contractual arrangement that the board has with the DBEA.
Right, but you have your two big salaries, the $11,500 for each coach. That's off the top. Then there's these other salaries that are coming in at $1,100 and I think $1,150.
Somebody hired it and overcoming or something like that, possibly. I'm sure, because it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
Because
that-
you're paid mid-season and end of season.
Yeah.
Like, that's what, it doesn't make sense that it would be March, that maybe somebody was hired at an odd time, which was why it would show up in the budget in March. But I don't know,
That's why
I
I
don't know.
question the entire sports project.
Okay, well, let's not wander into the weeds.
Right, but I'm just saying, if you do what Connor's suggesting is whatever encompasses in that entire year,
That's the season.
that's the season.
Well, I think,
Basketball, football, band.
That's a contractual issue.
well, I think my point was that whatever, the policy shouldn't be laying out, it should leave to the complete discretion of the board what
But you can't,
season's
yeah,
gonna
I
be.
would just, to comment,
It should be approved by the board.
but you can't say the football season's from
Not
September to
dictated by the
June.
board.
That's not the
What's
case.
that?
I don't think it should
Why?
be dictated by the board. I think it
Because
should be
football
approved by
season's
the
not
board.
September
It
to
is,
June.
but for the purpose of
And the
our
board
district, why
approves
not say it is?
On an annual
Even though it
basis.
might not be for their competition schedule, for the sake of our district,
I think
for the
the
sake
only
of
issue
paying,
we
why
run
not?
into is this idea of past practice. I mean, I want to try to refrain from turning the policy discussion into a contractual one, because that's...
Well, they're related.
They are related, but we're not here to debate the merits of the contract. What we're here to do is talk about policy. And I think the issue, one thing we always run up against is if you conduct yourself in a certain way, regardless of whether it's in your policy or not, then that becomes past practice. And there's common law in the state of Pennsylvania that then says
It becomes binding.
it becomes binding, and you have to continue that going forward, regardless of what your contract said or what your policies were. So from my standpoint as a board director, I think I've noticed many times that we've sat around here, I've heard, oh, well, it's only X number of dollars, let's just go ahead and approve it. No one thinks twice about it. And then the next year it's like, well, you can't redact that now because now you've done that. Now you're committed to it forever. And unless you eliminate the position entirely or the activity entirely. And so I think we have to be very careful on this particular policy or 122.1 on how that language is structured so that the board doesn't find itself painting itself into a corner when it comes to these extracurricular activities. Because at the end of the day, when we're in the financial constraints that we're at, we're left with very bad decisions, which are eliminate the programs altogether because we can't afford them anymore. So nobody wants to be in that position. So that's where I stand on 122, and I think it's going to require a lot more discussion than what we're going to give ourselves tonight.
Okay.
Well, we could take it from this point. I've got enough here to get started.
All right. So that's all we want to talk about for tonight? Is that...
Yeah, just the next couple ones after that, just some simple typo issues.
Oh, yeah.
123, if you look at page 2, it says it's number 122 instead of 123. That should be fixed.
Yeah.
See that?
I see it.
Where?
On the top...
On the top header, it says it's number 122, page 2. It's not. It's number 123. And then if you go to number 124...
Mine says 123, Student Assistance Program, page 2.
Oh, mine says 122.
Says,
This one here says 123.
on the left side or the right
On the left side, upper left side, and then on the right side it says number 123 also.
Yeah,
what ours
this says
looks like.
122.
Yeah, no, this one says...
Oh, yeah, yours is right.
And how about the next one, 124? It says, it's 124, but then it says 123, Student Crisis Intervention.
No, mine says 124.
These all need work.
Okay.
Frank, the typo's the least of the problem with the policy. They're
Do you have
outdated.
a revision date on that, Andrew?
123 was adopted in 1989, 124 adopted the same time, 1989.
No, I can tell you, as old as they are, they need to be worked.
It's different.
They're,
The fact that we're sitting here
You and
with
I
two
have two
separate
different
ones
copies.
is...
they're not.
Online is the 1989.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're,
but we're both looking at 1989s, and we both have different
Yeah, yours is more up to date.
typos.
I can only tell you that they need revision.
Yeah.
Major revision.
Student Assist 123. I'm going to check something here. Yeah, I was looking through some of these administrative guidelines. I made it about a third the way through so far. But I mean, some of this stuff, like, I couldn't even imagine, I don't know why, like, these guidance counselors are no longer in the district. Like, some of this stuff really we shouldn't even be looking at now because it's just so out of date. It should at least be updated. And I don't even know, we're not using these student assistant program forms anymore. Is that correct?
We have much more.
We have-
Which section are
okay.
you referring to? You're talking
I'm looking
policy.
at administrative guidelines right now, 122. But I mean, I saw some things in here, some typos which were terrible. Like one was, here, additional crises indicators, a suicide treat. Not a suicide threat, a suicide treat. Like typos like that, which are pretty egregious. And then here, person may indicate instead of may, like things like that, which I don't know. I know they're just typos, but it's something this
Spell
important.
checker back then on.
That's true, yes. But I
We
mean,
didn't have whiteout.
yeah. Well, actually, this one was typed on a computer, but like those things really should be.
So true, Frank, so true. I think, as we go through them one at a time, and I'll have to do a better job at that, but I think we just notate where you notice a typo, and I think that's a simple matter of scanning it in and emailing it to the administration so they can make the clerical corrections.
Yeah, I don't know about scanning that. But here, district testing, that needs to be updated as Iowa test, things like that.
I'm just not comfortable that what's different from that book you have and what I'm looking at online.
We should all be looking at the same book.
Yeah, we just saw a couple of minor things, but are there more significant changes that you have in that book that I don't have online?
And which one is governing the district? Is it that book, or is it these policies?
Well, I'm sure that's more up to date.
Well, no, because what was just emailed to you guys should have been the most up-to-date one.
I don't think it is.
So I don't know if the one that Lori put together is the one that's from the website, because what you said is the one you're looking at the website is what I have here.
I was gonna say, my numbers were right on 123 and 124.
Yours were right.
My like number in the corner there.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was right on the line.
So
Yeah.
maybe we need to make
Maybe
sure that
she
Lori's
just
got
sent
the right one that
yeah.
she's sending out
She
to
sent
us.
us an older version.
And so we're all working off the one that's actually on the website, because that's going to be the...
We have a long way to go here with this, and I'll just leave it at that. We have some things to look at here.
No, I don't think anybody's criticizing it.
No, I'm not taking it critically. I'm just everybody.
We're all working off the same body of
Absolutely.
work, and you know, to some. Let me just think about that for a second. Because if she gets the right one put together and she gets it out to us, as we're reading these things, you know, Adobe allows you to edit and strike things out.
It does if we can get it through the OCR complaint.
Right.
I mean, this clearly has not been through that. So, you know, you'll have to see if you can get it through there.
I'd like to just see if I couldn't get it through the OCR, and then be able to go in and at least highlight text that I think is wrong.
Yeah.
And I can ship it to you, and then you can ship it to Connor, or we can have it, and then it goes to Dr. Otto, or to Monica, whatever, and then it goes to Dr. Otto. So the clerical things are at least getting addressed.
Yeah.
You know, in between these meetings,
Right.
and then we're not going to get hung up on those. Little
Yeah, and if these policies, which we cannot, like this one, February 27, 1989, really, really old, if these can be updated before we discuss them, I mean, like, there's no point in us discussing a policy that's just going to be rewritten anyway. I think we did that a few times tonight, and you said you're going to go back and they're going to be completely overhauled.
Well, the next meeting is February 8th.
Well, I can tell you this: by February 8th, you're not going to get a complete overhaul of all these policies.
We don't need all of them.
It's just too many.
I think
Yeah.
if you can get through sections 1 and 2 by February 8th.
With complete overhauls.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, you're saying that some of these sections here, pick one of them we talked about tonight, 101 through 104, where you're like, look, some of these don't even apply because of PA Title
Right.
220 Section
Right.
5.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure PASBA's got some sort of
Yes.
recommendation, right? So you can
Yes.
come back and say, look, sections 101 through 104, this is what PASBA recommends. There's nothing preventing you from emailing that to us tomorrow, and gives us 7 days to kind of look at those things before we walk back in here. So if we want to change what PASBA's presented, then we can have that conversation on the 8th. But to sit there and see it for the first time on the 8th, we're not going to get anything accomplished.
Right. I'll do what I can.
Whatever you can get, just start
Yep.
feeding it to us one day at a time as you get the information. I think would be helpful. And then I would just say to the other committee members, and Dr. Otto, you too in particular, you're going to be in an interesting position when it comes to Section 308. You know, we got to think about a better way for that process to move forward in terms of the superintendent review, because what we currently have hasn't worked, at least in the 4 years that I've been here. One, as a board, we haven't followed it every single
Well, what's
year.
the date on it?
Date is August 24th. Well, the last revised date is December 13th, 2004.
Yeah. And I
Getting
got,
old.
I got on the
Policies-
board just a
Any
couple years
policy
after
more than
that,
5 years
so-
old is getting old.
Well, I mean, part of the issue with this one was, you know, we talked about a January form, but we're doing a review in November, and, well, it's supposed to be a mid-year review. Well, November isn't really mid-year, January is. So there's all kinds of conflict there in terms of what we're supposed to be doing in terms of a mid-year review. How are we handling feedback? Is it a 360 process? I mean, some of these things it says, look, you're supposed to provide us with a self-evaluation, and then we provide you with an evaluation, and then, you know, there's no discussion thereafter. It's like we both accept what the superintendent acknowledges that he got the evaluation from the board acknowledges they gave the evaluation, but there's no reconciliation of whatever happened in those evaluations. And so there's got to be a better process. I know.
I think there's many models that we can take a look
So
at.
start taking a look at other school districts, see what PASBA recommends, you know, give us some benchmarks, some standards that we can use, because I think the one we have here is terrible. That's my personal opinion.
All right, so we are, I guess, in discussion now.
I won't be that strong, but I think it needs work.
You haven't been the one on the other end trying to administer it, so
Well, I've been on the one receiving it, though. I can assure you of that.
Just one thing I would like to...
And no more comment on that one.
I'd like to, just here for parliamentary authority, including small group rules, that's something that needs to, we have to
I have that
address
on my
at the next
list.
meeting, like at the next board meeting, because if we don't need seconds on motions, and if we don't need, like, those are big things, and if we're not holding ourselves to that.
Well, I
policy,
would ask you this, just, it's been wrong for a little while. It may take a little time to correct it, but we're moving forward in the right
I
direction.
think, Mr. Kurtz, look, when it comes to the next board meeting, was it the 13th?
Yeah, I think.
I think under, when we're talking about committees or whatever.
You're reporting
gonna
out.
Report to the
You're
committee.
the
and say,
chair.
"Look, we found some surprising things.
Okay.
Here's
Sure,
a list of
you
some
have the
of
authority as
things.
a chair to report
Yeah,
out.
you can
All
say,
right.
hey, look, here's some of the things that we realize that are in the policy that we're not doing as a board. And everybody should be aware of that. So, let's step up. Did you guys know that Robert's Rules of Order in
You
small
want
group says you don't
to
have
email
to...
your notes to me, I'll corroborate it with my notes,
Very
and you
good.
can be ready for the presentation.
And by all means, look, nothing prevents any board member at any time
From
to
raising
go
a
through this
concern.
and say, oh, did you guys know that we're supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z? And, by the way, we're not.
Okay. And if you guys want to send me your notes
Look.
or anything, I can put them all together.
I think one of the things that's going to come up is when I review it in Section 6, I was really, hey, look, we're supposed to be having a 2-year budget. We haven't been doing that. We're going through the process now, so our business manager needs to be aware of that so she can start thinking about what are these numbers going to be next year.
When we get to the budget, I think it would be good to have her here.
Maybe after we
It'll be
pass
a-
through it once.
Okay.
She doesn't need to sit here and go through the ins and outs
That's
of all
true.
that nonsense.
Yeah.
I think when we get through it, we all need to be aware of what our responsibilities are and we need to deliver on them.
Questions from the public?
All right, questions, final comments from the public. Next meeting is February 8th it's not on the calendar yet, but it should go up soon. It's not, what's happening for that meeting, we're going to have a revenue enhancement committee meeting, and then it's going to go right into the policy review committee, and we're going to start the policy review committee at 7:30, I believe.
What time is the RAC meeting?
6.
6?
Yeah.
Wow, that's early.
They're going back to back.
I know,
90
still,
minutes.
it's early.
90 minutes per.
How many policies are there altogether?
I counted them. Let me get that for you quick. Policy review committee. I think it might be a little bit more. Let me just see here.
Is it here? Policy review.
What's that? Yeah, it should be here.
Yeah, those will be here.
Policy review committee. Here we go.
Are you going to go over 115 inter-scholarship athletic activities programs with the eligibility?
We haven't even gotten to that one yet.
Did you go over it? No, I mean, you went from 105 to 120.
Well, I think when we were sort of just jumping ahead because as a board, as committee members here at 9 o'clock, we were like, is there anything you guys want to bring to attention
No, that's
before
fine.
we just start jumping ahead on things that we had?
I just want to make sure if, when I find something, I bring it up. It doesn't just, you don't say, well, we already talked about it.
We haven't talked about 115 yet.
Yeah.
115 is another yellow page. That's a real old one.
Mr.
It
Sir.
does show that once you're failing 3 subjects, that's when you become ineligible.
Yeah, but it's 1 major, 2 minors, or something like that.
Yeah,
Right.
it's 1 major, 1 minor, or 2 minors. You can still
Right,
pass.
1 major, 1 minor, so that's 2 subjects.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Once you fail your 3 subjects, that's when you become ineligible. It says, in order to participate in the activity.
Right, I mean, I'm familiar with what it says because we talked about it a couple of times now, right? And we found out that and that would be something we can talk about whether you want us to review that policy or not. I think the instruction committee already kind of addressed that and said, well, look, wait a minute. We looked at it, we exceed the current standards, PIA and everybody else out there. Who says you can be failing, I think, 3 or 4 classes before you're ineligible. And quite frankly, you're failing a class. It's not like towards the end of the year. It means you can take 1 quiz and be failing.
In high school,
Right?
Predates me, Connor. I know.
And all of a sudden you're on probation and this, that, the other thing, and you don't get your grade up by the
That's
next
why we need Mrs.
test.
Trainer here.
Yeah.
Now you're not playing, and then you're off the team. So it's, one bad day at school, and all of a sudden you're off the team. That's a pretty tough standard.
Well, they said there's a long process of
It's continual review. You can be ineligible, then you get eligible again. You can go ineligible, and that's the way
It's
I read
weekly.
it. So you're constantly reviewing the academics, performance of the students if you're a coach.
Eligibility lists have to be produced weekly.
Weekly. And so, you have a chance as a student to pick up the pace and get back on the team, but quite frankly, when you have 2 or 3 bad days or bad tests or whatever, and you're off the team. I mean, and once you're off, you're off.
We have 242 policies. You were right, Mr. Somero, close to 250. And we have 102 administrative guidelines. 242 policies, 102 administrative guidelines. At least counting off the website.
Very much.
Yep. So I hope to see you all.
Take care.
Meeting adjourned? Yeah, meeting adjourned.
Boom.